tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky plots of the La Platas. The Rocky Mountain High gets sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Sunday, December 22nd, Monday, December 23rd for those of you across the pond and beyond. Secure your Star Wars saga closer into the myths and lore of the real-life Jedi with our special guests, Andrei Knight, a real-life Templar Knight, and Oksana Lovich, a high priestess in the Temple of Isis. They will reveal long-guarded secrets at the heart of many of the world's spiritual traditions and their implications for the times we are living in now. This special Christmas episode is not to be missed. So Oksana Lovich is a certified life coach, hypnotherapist, energy healer, and Reiki master who became interested in self-development at an early age due to tragic events in her own life. These experiences created a burning desire to find the inner peace she was missing and led her not only to the traditional methods of education at Berkeley and Sussex, but also immersing herself into the teachings of Native American tribes in order to learn from generations of healers before her. She also holds certificates in Marisa Peer's Rapid Transformational Therapy, the Silva Method, and the Academy of Ancient Magic. Andrei Knight began his meditation training over 2 decades ago, studying under martial arts legend Stephen K. Hayes, as well as his teacher, Dr. Masaki Hatsumi in Japan. While training with Hayes, he served the Dalai Lama as a protection escort and security advisor, and was initiated into the Diamond and Lotus tradition of Tendai Mikyo, a form of esoteric tantric Buddhism. Bridging the wisdoms of both the East and West, he holds a PhD in metaphysics and is certified as a professional life coach by Fowler Wainwright International, as well as an NLP therapist. In 2010, Andrei was inducted into the Order of the Hereditary Knights Templar of Britannia, and in 2014, he was invited to join the board of directors for the Declaration of Consciousness Movement and World Yoga Day. Together, they lead workshops and retreats both online and at exotic destinations all over the world, helping people overcome their subconscious blocks and limiting beliefs in order to realize their full potential, discover their true life's purpose, and achieve their dreams. They work with people from all walks of life, from victims of rape and abuse, returning war veterans to corporate executives, star athletes, Hollywood celebrities, and even 2 presidential candidates, as well as 3 royal families. Hey, Andrei and Oksana, welcome so much, and thanks so much for being on the show tonight. I'm so excited to learn more about what you guys do and how you came to, come into this life.
Hi, Tessa. It's such an honor to be here with you. Thanks for having us on.
Yes, it's such an honor to be on your show. Thank you so much.
So, I always like to ask my guests, did you guys, and we're going to dive...
People that have similar path so that you learn something new, right? And I think I just always had this calling because I was always attracted to the most mystical and powerful places on earth. I was always attracted to explore my inner self. I was always more attracted to holistic and inner world rather than material world. And though now as a life coach, I understand that they come together.
They're linked.
Yeah, they're linked, but my desire, because I grew up in a very rich family, but my desire was always not to go in the same direction that they went. I actually wanted to explore like mystics, people who sometimes don't even have homes. I wanted to see their beliefs and points of view, and I've learned so much from them.
That is so awesome, and it's so amazing that you guys went out and got all of this education. And Andrei, for you to work for the Dalai Lama, that is amazing. He's one of my favorite people. I love his laugh. It's so innocent and childlike.
It was pretty surreal. Well, that's what I wanted to say. Like, people ask me to describe what he's like as a person off stage, and that's what comes to mind. He has the behavior, the mannerisms, and the aura of a 5-year-old boy. That's really, if I was to come up with one word to describe him, it's a certain purity, a certain wonder with the world, like everything he sees, he's seeing for the first time.
Innocence is actually the key to be awakened.
Huh.
Because there are those who lose that innocence, because when we're children, when we're just born, we're so awakened, we're so enlightened. Truly, we don't think for too long, we don't get bothered by other people's behavior unless for a few minutes.
You know, that's a great point. Like I said earlier, it's almost weird to me when somebody doesn't feel these things, they don't feel at all supernatural. That's just it. Being awake is our natural state, Tessa.
Yes.
It's the modern world tends to cloud us, distract us, and desensitize us over time. But really, being awake is our natural state. People like the Dalai Lama just manage to stay connected, and the rest of us can get reconnected. But it's not really a supernatural ability that anybody doesn't have. They just haven't explored it maybe yet.
I believe in it too.
That's
why it's also...
Oh, go ahead.
That's why when people say, like, I want to become like a better person, I want to learn how to stop thinking, I want to release blocks and limitations. So it's actually not working towards it, but it's remembering your natural state, because that's not who you are. That's what you learn from your environment. As soon as you remember who you truly are, even if you have few glimpses of it, it's going to be so much easier, because just being in that state once or twice can help you to recreate that state. And the more you practice it, the more it becomes natural.
That's the irony of it. Like the real work of a mystic, the more you progress, it's really getting back to the beginning, reconnecting with that innocence and purity you had as a child. In Tibet, actually, when a Lama dies and is reincarnated, Lama means reincarnated one. Dalai means he's the head Lama. He's been reincarnated more times than the rest. So when a Lama dies and they go searching for their new incarnation in Tibet, they have to find them before their 5th birthday, because it's said at that age you still haven't forgotten everything that you've learned between lives.
Do you guys believe in reincarnation? And I know with, being around the Dalai Lama, perhaps that is a belief of yours. I've always been open-minded about it, and I've had friends tell me their experiences and stories their kids would tell them. And then with my 4-year-old, she told me at a year old different things about her past life, that she was a man, she was tall, she had blonde hair, wore glasses, and worked as a military doctor. And it all started with her tying a lanyard around her leg. And I'm like, Lily, don't do that. When you get up, it's going to make your leg feel funny. You're going to get pins and needles, and it's so uncomfortable. And she's like, Mom, I have to tie it off or I'll bleed out. And I was just like, what kind of 1-year-old has this terminology? How does she know these things? And it's so amazing that she does recall it.
Yeah, and in Tibet, that's what they do too. When they find a child who's a candidate, they put him in a room, and there'll be 5 pairs of sandals, 5 pairs of glasses, 5 books, 5 robes, and they're like, pick the items that are yours, or that were yours, and it has to be 100% right. They can't get one wrong. So that's how they identify a Lama. In my own life, I mean, I've seen enough evidence, Tessa, and actually a lot of the training as a Templar is to have conscious recall of your past lives, because we want access. The belief is that it's not our first time doing this. If you're called to that service, it's because you've done it in a past life. So it's considered very important to recall all the training and experiences you've already been through. So we have the benefit of more than one lifetime of training and experience. So I've personally experienced and seen enough that it's no longer a belief, it's a knowing. It's a certainty for me. But the only thing I would say is the word past. That's what I take issue with, because your past lives aren't really over. You're living concurrently your past, present, and future lives, all at the same time. It's that we're used to focusing our consciousness by default into one point of space-time at a time. And that's where really somebody who's clairaudient, clairvoyant, a remote viewer, they train in expanding their consciousness to just see more of the spectrum. more of the timeline, either backwards to help people connect with relatives or past lives, or forward to have premonitions of the future. It's just broadening the perception. Like some people don't hear dog whistles and some do. You know, the range is different.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be like that with sight, with sound. Some people see auras and energies, some don't. Some people can hear a dog whistle. So some people can perceive further along or further back along the timeline. But the past lives, they're not really over. You're actually experiencing all of them concurrently.
Mm-hmm. I believe in it too.
What do you think the purpose of reincarnation is? Is it to learn certain lessons of life and learn them all, or are there specific ones that you think we need to learn? It's just really mind-boggling to me. But I think sometimes it's kind of like when you're playing a video game. You start all over again. You get to play again, and you learn each time more and more things. Is it enlightenment or happiness? Or
and people have different experiences. It's progression of the soul, Tessa. The soul comes to the physical plane to gain certain experiences that can't be gained when you're energy. You need physical senses, you need a physical body, and that's also why the veil of forgetfulness. Like people are like, I gotta start all over again from square one. That doesn't feel fair. That feels like a punishment. It's necessary because otherwise it wouldn't be a discovery. It wouldn't be an objective experience. If you already knew all was one and you felt that connection and you knew you were the divine, there wasn't that mystery, then there would be no spiritual discovery. There would be no spiritual quest. You see, it almost makes the experience worthwhile and valid to have that forgetting between lives.
I believe that each person chooses to come back in a way, because I've had a friend who she's a very special person because she had a accident, very, very strong accident. She's from Mount Shasta, and she actually was in coma for like 10 or 20 days for a long, long time. And she said she literally she was on the other side, and she actually saw her body. And she said that when she was on the other side, she said like lots of souls wants to come, but there are not enough bodies available. That's what she told me. I don't know exactly how you can believe in it, but that's what she told me. And she also said that like when you go to the other side, there is so much peace, love. So when you go there, it's more like being rather than experiencing, or maybe helping others, because it's just pure love and very, very positive emotions there on the other side where she was. And she said on the opposite, the souls that come to this earth, some of the souls are actually chosen, are the ones who want to bring that light and that awakening to this world, because lots of them also see that people are completely lost in their minds and they don't feel still. That's why she was actually teaching us in the Sweat Lodge that the purpose of life is to learn how to be still. She was not teaching about money and success, because she said it's like also temporary and only for people who live in the physical world. They're so concerned about that, but truly the purpose of life is to find stillness within, no matter what's happening.
And that seems almost impossible in this day and age. But I guess you can still be active, but still be still in a spiritual way.
Yeah, stillness of the mind. She didn't mean be still, but like be still in your mind so that no matter what happens, it doesn't disturb you, because life is unpredictable. Even the most spiritual person who constantly positive may experience turbulences. It's just if you allow every thought to influence how you feel, it's going to be very difficult to live life.
Well, that's just it. Most people live their life being pushed and pulled and bouncing around according to circumstance. You're being pulled in different directions. And the core teaching of the Jedi that we'll get into, they were basically, people call them lots of things, wizards, mystics. Mm-hmm. They were reality benders. They figured out how to use their will to bend circumstances and situations to their favor. Mm-hmm. And all it really involves is, instead of kind of being a victim and being pushed and pulled around by circumstance, is you start living by intention and by design instead. So you start rearranging circumstances to your advantage. And Oksana's very right. You almost have to, it's not like you stand still and you stop your life. It's like you have to find the stillness in the eye of the storm. Like the image that comes to my mind when you were talking about this, mm-hmm. the monks in Japan that have the really wide hats, you can't see their faces, mm-hmm. and they just walk step after step, almost in slow motion. And on one side, you've got the bustle of the city. On the other side, you've got the traffic of the street. But like none of it bothers them. They just continue their slow meditative walk, one mm-hmm. deliberate, that's the key, deliberate step at a time. And it's a good metaphor, I guess, for how we can take control of our lives. Deliberately, one step at a time, and not getting distracted or pulled to the side by everything that happens to come at you.
Mm-hmm. And it's of course it's a journey. It doesn't happen in one simple step, because a lot of people, they take a meditation class, or they take one class maybe on hypnotherapy, I don't know, any class with self-help, right, that helps you to have better understanding of yourself, and then they think that their life is going to change. In my opinion, that it's like a almost lifetime work. It doesn't have to be hard, but you should be constantly reminded about breathing, being still, because we also live in a world where there is constant media, people who are unawakened, magazines that teaching us the opposite things. They actually are all based on fears.
Distraction, external fear,
yes.
Lack mentality.
So when you actually remind yourself each and every day, just the way you have breakfast in the morning, if you remind yourself about these qualities, if you do daily meditations in the morning, you can feel balanced. So at very early age, I was already in therapy, and I was already in search for healers. And that's why I awakened so quickly, because at 22, I could have already teach people. Because usually it takes for people, like, some people awaken to this knowledge at 50 or 60 when they realize what is it about life, right? Closer to when they actually live half of their life, and maybe there is some left, maybe not. But I awakened so early, that's why at 22 people couldn't believe I was 22. Everybody thought, wow, you look so young, but you look like, talking to you seems like you are 30 or 40. My wisdom, so I gained my wisdom from my experiences.
Well, ultimately you had to find the inner healer within you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've done so much healing. At certain point, I've had hypnotherapists once a week, therapists once a week, healer, massage, Reiki. I've had it all. I really was healing myself, because I knew that. So I listened to Louise Hay, and she also said she had trauma, she was abused, and she said it took her a while. And guess what? When you have a Thanksgiving dinner, you clean it. You clean after Thanksgiving dinner, but at first it seems like so much mess, and it feels like there is no result. But then when it's all clean, it's all clean. So I kind of was patient, because I knew since she could have healed, I could heal. I could have been healed. So I kept going and going with intense speed. And eventually, like, all my problems went away. There are a few that still come out sometimes, but it's so rare compared to what it was, that I know that there is always the light at the end of the tunnel. It's from Cinderella. Light.
Look, it's interesting, because I had gone through the same thing about the same age. I was 5, almost 6, when my mom was killed by a drunk driver, and my dad took it so hard. He began drinking more than he usually would, and partaking in drugs, and he ended up leaving us with our grandparents. We were supposed to go for a visit, but then he never sent for us. And so you do get bounced around, and you do feel like something's wrong with you. And but it's awesome how it, for some people, it's different, I guess. But for me, I looked for that spiritual healing and enlightenment, something to help me out. And so I visited so many different churches and denominations, just trying to find that spiritual peace. And you do grow up fast. You really can't help it. You have to. And so, going through school, I didn't have people really getting along with me because I was more mature than them, and they were doing kid things. Moved out when I was 16 and worked and went to school, graduated, and then joined the military. And but it makes you look deeper into life than a lot of kids would. It makes you question things. Why are we here? Why did this happen? Why was my mom taken from me and my dad? And it's awesome. I can relate to you so much on that story. It's very sad. I do miss my mom, and my dad also died at a very early age from all the abuse that he had put himself through. But spiritual enlightenment and that feeling of peace that you just miss out so much on, and then sharing that with others, I think is also why we're here, to help each other through this whole process.
Well, wow.
That's so true.
It's nobody would wish experiences like that on anyone. But on the other hand, if they hadn't happened, you wouldn't be where you are now. It's amazing how everything that happens to us, and even the tragic stuff, in a way, leads us to what we're meant to become. And I guess, like when I was saying earlier, not being pushed and pulled by life, but living life by design, a part of that is developing that trust and that knowing that even when something happens that's totally painful and tears you apart, you still have that trust that it's all leading you somewhere, and you don't fight against it.
Yes.
And I totally agree with that.
Really
I've had people
to develop.
Yeah, I've had people disagree with me, like, oh, that's BS. Everything doesn't happen for a reason. Why'd this happen? Blah, blah, blah. But I do agree, no matter how good or how bad it is, everything does happen for a reason, because it makes you who you are, and it sends you the direction you choose to go during that time. It's a learning process.
Yes, because truly right now, if I can change everything in my life, I would not change anything. I've also done past life regression, when you go into your past life. And I've done it many times, but at the first time I did it, I saw my parents and I talked to my parents. And I actually realized that I myself, as a soul, chose my parents. I knew that would happen because it would serve my evolution. And after that, I never ever felt bad. Because right now, like, I don't have parents, but I don't feel lonely. I don't feel I miss them, because I really feel I have them. I have them. Sometimes when I don't feel well, I feel the presence of my father.
Your father? I felt him around you more than once.
Many times, because I just feel so connected. My mother as well, but my father was the biggest issue why all the vlogs were created, because the father was the love of my life. And he also loved me so much. He spoiled me very, very strongly. So, and seriously, it's like, I don't think anyone can be better than my father, but I shouldn't say this, but he was just so amazing, okay? Anyway, but I feel him anytime, like, I don't feel well, or the blocks coming out, or some beliefs arise again, negative beliefs. I feel my father hugging me and, like, supporting me and telling me again that I love you, you're just so perfect. So I feel my father is, like, very close to me.
Well, a lot of the traditions that teach reincarnation, a big part of the belief is actually that, nothing happens to us. Nothing is an accident. We choose the circumstances of our incarnation based on whatever we're meant to learn, whatever we're meant to accomplish in that life. We choose the circumstances of our birth, our parents as well. And this, people that are unfortunately born to abusive environments, There, for some reason, it's a necessary experience for you to go through, whether to teach you lessons, whether to toughen you up, whether to show you how not to raise a family. But for whatever reason, the belief is that those experiences are designed by you. It's also actually at the core of astrology. Like, a lot of people will say, well, I don't know that I believe that planets influence my life. Well, first of all, I mean, look at what the moon does to the tides on Earth, and you're 70% water. So absolutely the movement of the planets influences you, but that's not the core belief of astrology. The core belief of astrology is that you chose the time and place of your birth when you were in that place between worlds. And by looking at the position of the stars and planets, that's like the clue that you left yourself as to your mission and the course you're going to chart in life, is the position of the planets. So they have cause and an effect backwards when they say the planet influences you. No, the position of the planet is a marker you left yourself before your birth. That's the core belief that's at the heart of astrology.
Yeah, and we're very close to other planets, like not so far as we can reach out and touch them, but you can see them twinkling in the sky, and you can tell the difference between them and other stars. But I do think different alignments, so on and so forth, do cause different effects. And certain dates, like, people just go crazy, like Friday the 13th or full moons. There's so much activity going on then, as far as people kind of just freaking out or different crazy events happening. It pulls the tides. It could pull other things. We're a lunatic what? I'm sorry?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was agreeing with you. The word lunatic comes from the moon.
Oh. Well, that makes sense.
Yes, in lunatic, actually, in Russian, lunatic, luna, and lunatic, it's the same, yes. Luna is coming from lunatic. Luna, that's how the moon is.
Wow.
So more than one language.
That's interesting. I've never heard that before. So, as far as Jedi lore and myth, what exactly is a Jedi? Is there a difference between a real-life Jedi and the Jedis you see up on the big screen?
Well, there's the spelling is different, for one, to differentiate the two. Of course, Disney and Lucasfilm own the trademark on Jedi. The actual spelling, and it comes from Egyptian, is Djedi, Jedi. It's Jedi is, I guess, how they pronounce it. The meaning of the word, and this is perhaps one of the key differences. The meaning of the word comes from the Egyptian word Djed. And a Djed literally translates as a pillar, sometimes referred to as a pillar of light. And it's a very specific pillar. You can type in DJED into Google and you'll see a picture of it, but it always has like 4 layers or slits carved into it. And you see that particular shape, and you know a Djed when you see it because it's always 4. It's never more, it's never less. You see it in columns in their buildings and architecture. You see it very prominently in a lot of their artworks. The staff of Osiris that's often pictured behind the Ankh, the famous Egyptian light bulb picture that everybody says looks like 2 light bulbs. Well, if you look closely, the light bulbs are mounted on a Djed pillar. The pedestal holding them has exactly 4 layers underneath. And it's actually not 4. Here's where we get into kind of the double meanings, because everything in Egyptian has an outer and an inner meaning, always. There's always the outer school and the inner school. So you see at first 4 layers, but actually you're meant to count the layers in between too, the spaces in between. So it's 7, not 4. And the staff of Osiris is often also referred to as the spine of Osiris. And when you see these ridges and valleys, it kind of looks like the vertebra of a spine. So if you start to think about it, 4 or 7 points along the spine that can glow, right? The pillar of light. The Djed is described as the pillar of light. So you think about 7 points along the spine that cause it to glow, and you're like, whoa, You're talking about the chakras. You're talking about Kundalini energy rising up the spine. Okay, this isn't mystical at all. So the movie, they pillar of light, you think lightsaber, you think the glowing sword. But in reality, they actually did refer to a pillar of light, except it's your own spine when fully active, fully activated, and energy flowing through it. So that's perhaps the biggest similarity and also the biggest difference. But everything else, George Lucas has been asked whether he knows about the Egyptian legends or not, and he says, no, it's a work of fiction. I just made it up to entertain people. But I think in every work of fiction, if you're truly tapped in, and he strikes me as the kind of guy who is, you're always channeling, whether you know it or not. You know, Tesla never filed for a single patent, despite everything he invented, because he didn't believe the ideas were his. He said his mind was a receiver. They came to him.
He wanted to share it with everyone.
Who knows?
Everyone should be able to build it.
Right. It's free energy. It should be free. So George Lucas says he's never studied the Egyptian lore, but I don't think that makes what he wrote any less valid or any more fictional, because it's spot on. You look at the hairdos of Princess Amidala or Princess Leia, and it's exactly what the Hopi priestesses wear during ceremony, the Hopi Indian priestesses. Same hairdo. He even channeled that. He never studied the Hopi. So these were a real mystical order. It's documented in writing. There's papyruses that talk about meetings between the pharaoh Khufu and his Djed wizard when he was designing the pyramids. So it's not up for speculation. It's well documented. But these were mystics that studied the cultivation of your personal energy to the point that your spine glowed, your palms glowed, and you could influence the events around you. And you're like, well, that sounds exactly like the Star Wars Jedi, right? Yoda says the Force is this thing that surrounds us, that binds all living things together, that flows through us. It's always flowing through you. You just haven't developed your awareness of it to the point that you could work with it. And that's the key thing. That's the big message that I really want your listeners to take away. In ancient Egypt, the only qualification to become a Jedi was to show up at one of their temples and say, teach me. I feel the call. I feel this intuitive urge. It brought me here. Please teach me. I don't know, Oksana, if it's the same for the Sisterhood of the Rose, but that's really the only qualification. Teach me. If you feel the call, you're qualified. You've more than likely done this before in a past lifetime. We've all got this ability within us. It's just training our awareness to make use of it. Is it the same for the Sisterhood?
Yes. If you have a desire to learn something, it usually comes from your purpose, because I believe that each person comes on earth with a specific purpose to accomplish, and your soul knows exactly what you want. People who do not know what they want, it's just because they are not yet ready for that. But when a person has this passion to become an actor or transformational coach, a doctor, it's something that you came to this earth to do. It is your purpose. And of course, you should be never rejected from the knowledge, from learning this subject, because it's your purpose. All the doors will open for you if you're supposed to be doing it. Quite an opposite if it's not the right for you. Like I was doing acting before, and I'm very ambitious. So if I do anything, I do it with a lot of work and dedication. But I kind of felt like lots of movies opened up for me, but not the ones that I wanted to be in. So, and then I realized that it was not actually my purpose. So thank goodness it didn't open up for me. So sometimes we should be grateful that something doesn't open up for us, because maybe it's saving us from something worse.
Yeah, and you don't realize it till later. You know, at first you're really disappointed about it and, you know, sad that this didn't come to pass, but in the end you see that it did happen for a reason. It was better that it hadn't happened, like you had wished it or prayed for or whatnot.
Yes, that's so true. In my life, it's definitely true. In everyone's life actually.
So what is the Temple of Isis?
Temple of Isis, before, I mean, right now there are some women who are very awakened, but there was a time when women were sharing their powerful knowledge and skills together. They supported each other and they healed the whole world with that. Because there is nothing stronger than community. Even to become a millionaire, you need to have a community. You can never do it by yourself. The same as with helping others, healing the world. I believe that should be a community of people gathered together, sharing knowledge, because I am not religious, but even in the Bible it says when 2 or 3 people gather together and ask for the same thing, it will inevitably come. So Temple of Isis, it's exactly powerful women who helped each other, who supported each other, who tremendously helped the world because they were together. And right now I kind of feel that I am recreating similar situation because I have lots of powerful women that I'm surrounded and I am teaching them so much, and I feel that by changing them I'm also healing myself. It's because there is no such thing as like when you heal somebody, you give your energy away. You actually heal yourself as well. Because we are all one. The more people you heal, the more the whole world becomes a better place to be. So the place where you live becomes a better. So you have less problems and problems with your mind. That is why it's very essential to not only be working on yourself, but literally sending this knowledge to as many people as possible so that we all awaken.
Well, the universe is very symbiotic and interactive by nature. That's part of the reason for this veil of forgetfulness that I spoke of earlier, this illusion of separation, because it encourages interaction. You know, there's cells that reproduce asexually just by copying themselves. But if you keep making a copy that's the same as the original, evolution doesn't happen. You need sexual interaction. You need different bodies coming together, sharing their information to make a totally new third in order for progress to happen, in order for evolution to happen, in order for the universe, motion to happen in the universe, particles have to interact with each other. So that's part of why this illusion of separation. So we help each other, so we interact with each other, because that's how progress is made. Another word for the Temple of Isis is the Sisterhood of the Rose. And this is a term that can be traced back to Egypt as well. Some say it's even older, that it comes to us from Atlantis. A lot of the Egyptian legends and mysticism actually come from Atlantis. Their god Thoth, some say he was a god, some say he was a priest from Atlantis. He was an immigrant, which makes sense. His continent sank, he relocated. But he's the one that's said to have been given the Egyptians writing, science, and mysticism alike. He was said to be the one that taught it. Another name for Thoth is Hermes, and that's where the term Hermetic teachings comes from. But all of this kind of ties together. And Oksana, I'm glad you mentioned religion, because actually the whole story of the Jedi does tie into Christmas in a way, in a lot of ways actually, that people don't realize. Because the whole nativity scene, right, when baby Jesus is born, what's the first thing that happens, Tessa? 3 wise men come from Egypt to check out a baby born with exceptional abilities. That's right out of Star Wars, and that's right out of historical Jedi lore. I'm willing to bet that the 3 wise men were more than likely Jedi.
Yeah, and even though they had different jobs and different things going on in their life, they were perhaps Jedi. And
they
like
always do. Yeah. You always have a cover. You have like your 3D existence that allows you to carry on in modern day life. But yeah, you always have kind of your bigger mission that you're trying to fulfill through your work. And I remember somebody once telling me that they were really interested in studying this stuff, and they felt called. They're like, but who am I? You know, I make coffee at Starbucks.
Doesn't matter.
And how many people do you interact with during the course of the day? Don't ever put yourself down because of what you're doing in the 3D world. You're in a position to interact with people. And especially coffee, it's like you're one of the first people they see in the morning. You have a chance to set their energy, their tone for the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't overlook anything happening in the 3D world. And I think that's part of the Egyptian teachings with the outer and the inner lesson. You know, everything having kind of the double meaning.
So it's strange to me as far as, talking about Egyptians and such. It seems like they were so enlightened at one time, the way, the different things they use, like the different lights and ways of being. And it seems like they've kind of digressed, in a sense, as far as they don't do the same things now as they did then. What do you think happened? Was there something that happened to where they did lose that power and what was going on at that time? Or did they just... I don't know. It's just so confusing to me how that happens.
This is one of the biggest questions that I ponder, Tessa. With both Egyptian and also Hindu culture, we got so far with the ancient Vedic sciences, and now you have people living in poverty. You have the caste system where people discriminate against other people, and it's like this is the same culture that 5,000 years ago when Chinese culture was just getting started, they already had the high Vedic sciences. What happened? And yes, the world goes through waves of kind of progress and moving back. There's a concept called the Great Year, or in Sanskrit it's called a yuga, Y-U-G-A, and we measure the year, which is 365 days. But there's actually a much bigger called, that's the solar year, but there's what's called the galactic year. And it's closer to 26,000 years. And it's divided into two halves called yugas. And there's a light yuga and a dark yuga. And this ties into the precession of the equinoxes, how the summer and winter solstice don't happen in the same zodiac sign every year. Well, they do every year, but every about 2,000, 2,200 years, it shifts. So every yuga, every half cycle, we go through the entire zodiac. That's where our North Pole faces on the summer solstice. And right now you hear people talk about the age of Aquarius. Okay? Mm-hmm. We're entering the age of Aquarius. That's what that means, is our North Pole points to Aquarius. Before that, it used to point to Pisces, the age of Christianity. That's why the symbol is a fish. The entire, what we would term the Christian age, was the age of Pisces. And they say actually Jesus himself was a Pisces. If the wise men came from Egypt to Bethlehem and followed these stars to get there, it would have been March. It couldn't have been December, actually.
Right.
So there's an astronomical case for Jesus being a Pisces, and that would make sense with the fish. And if you work your way backwards through the precession of the equinoxes, before Pisces you have Aries. The Jewish tradition, the Old Testament, the rabbis are always depicted blowing horns at the start and end of every Sabbath. Okay, so that's the age of Aries. And what did Moses say when he came down from the mountain? He said, we're ushering in a new age. That was the age of Judaism. We're done with these pagan rituals like the sacrificing of the bull, the age of Taurus. So all of these things, if you trace our sacred books, it's all astrology. They're talking exactly to the precession of the equinoxes. And this is some of this ancient knowledge that both the Templars and the Jedis that we study and we keep track of. Because what you mentioned about moving backwards, like when we say the Dark Ages, we refer to a specific time between maybe 500 AD to about 1400 AD when we had the Renaissance. Mm-hmm. But that's not the real Dark Ages, Tessa. The real Dark Ages has lasted for 13,000 years. Egypt, some people say they were a very advanced civilization, not primitive, that they had spaceships even, that they had, it's depicted in some of their hieroglyphs, and of course some of their more advanced sciences.
You even see it in artwork.
Yeah, at the Temple of Abagos, there was a facade, there was an earthquake in the 80s and a facade fell away, and underneath, Ancient Aliens always shows this. Mm-hmm. There's actually hieroglyphics of helicopters and spaceships over the doorway of the Temple of Abagos. You can Google it and look at it. Or Ancient Aliens always shows it during their show. So here again, it's not a matter of speculation. They depicted it. They wrote it down. Now,
They
it could
saw
be
it,
said
they
that
drew
maybe
it, or wrote it, yeah.
some say maybe it was fantasy, maybe it was fiction, or maybe they just looked up and recorded what they saw. Yeah. But there are depictions of flying craft. The whole idea of the pyramids being tombs, do you know where that comes from? Because there's never been a sarcophagus found in a pyramid. They're found in the burial chambers around the pyramids. The reason we assume they're tombs is because there's no soot marks on the ceiling. And we assume no soot marks means no torches. No torches means nobody went in them. Why would somebody build something so huge and never go inside? Oh, must be a tomb. Or maybe they had electricity.
Yeah,
and they
had light
didn't
bulbs.
need torches. They depicted light bulbs in their artwork, right?
Yeah.
But that assumption is never made. Now, there's something that looks like a sarcophagus, but I don't believe that dead people laid in it, because the Russians actually went in and did some experiments. They put an apple inside the quote-unquote sarcophagus and an apple next to it, and they came back and checked on it in 2 weeks. Now, being cold and dark and damp and moldy, what do you think happened to the apple? After 2 weeks, the one outside the sarcophagus was moldy and rotten. The one inside looked exactly the same. And it fascinated the Russian scientists so much, Russians are now experimenting with building food houses, warehouses, as pyramids instead of rectangles. Because they believe the pyramid shape has some kind of property where it focuses the electromagnetic energy naturally coming out of the earth, of which there's a lot of in the Giza Plateau, by the way. It's not an accident that that spot was picked, but it takes the natural electromagnetic energy of the earth and it focuses it. So yes, people laid inside there, but not because they were dead. I believe for exactly the opposite reason, because they were healing their bodies, and in the case of pharaohs or mystics, they were initiation chambers to raise their consciousness to the next level. There's a papyrus that talks that before a pharaoh would ascend the throne, he would go inside the Great Pyramid, his consciousness would leave his body and merge with the consciousness of the star Sirius, because they believed that all stars were conscious beings, and then return back into his own body with the information he learned. And only then he would be qualified to ascend to the throne. That's actually written down. Now here again, it could be a fanciful bit of fiction, or it could be just recording what actually happened at the time. But we actually have recordings of them being initiation chambers. So to go back to your question of why did we digress, according to the Yuga cycle, remember, Egypt, they say, that we have reason to believe they're much older, but they say 5,000 to 8,000 years for the height of Egyptian society, going back 5,000 to 8,000 years. Looking at water erosion, we have reason to push that back 50,000 or more years. But to give you an idea of scale, we have been in the Dark Ages for 13,000 years. So you're talking before Mesopotamia, before China, and theoretically even before the rise of the Egyptian civilization we know. That was all the Dark Ages. We are just now, as we leave Pisces and enter the Age of Aquarius, we're just entering the transition out of the darkest of the dark. We still have a ways to go to before what Vedic science would call the Golden Age or the Light Yuga. We're just exiting the Dark Yuga. So it seems to happen like we go through periods where consciousness flourishes and we go through periods where it diminishes. The interesting thing is the legend of Atlantis. Now, Plato wrote down that the continent sank beneath the sea. The Egyptians, according to the legends that Thoth told them, he said that before the natural catastrophe befit the island, there was a psychic calamity, because he depicts all of the residents of Atlantis as being psychic. And if we look at human evolution, language only shows up about 8,000 years ago, yet we've been walking around for 100,000 years ago. So the question comes about, did we just communicate with grunts? You know, why does language show up later? Or maybe we didn't need language because we were all telepathic. According to Thoth, the Atlanteans were telepathic, and they caught a psychic virus that spread from person to person.
Oh, wow.
Imagine a whole society of awakened, powerful psychics, and they catch a telepathic virus. That would be devastating. So he talks about a blackness that spread from person to person through the psychic field, and the natural catastrophe didn't cause the downfall of Atlantis. According to him, it was kind of the result of, the symptom of this disease that befell them, and it's described as a blackness. Well, gee, our current illusion of separation, our current idea that telepathic abilities are supernatural and only a chosen few have them, that sounds like a blackness, right? A blanket being put over our psyche. It sounds like exactly what Thoth described.
Yeah, and some say that it sunk, and others say that it rose up out of the sea and left.
Flew away.
Yeah.
Perhaps both. Why is it either or? Maybe they had craft, and a few of them left, and a few of them, like Thoth, settled in places like Egypt and gave rise to that civilization. Probably more than one came to the Mayans, too. There's a lot of parallels between Mayan culture and Egyptian culture, Cambodian as well.
And they also
Cambodia has
depict
pyramids.
shuttlecraft as well.
Exactly. So both could be true. Absolutely.
Well, on that note, I hate to cut you off, but we do have to go to our first musical break. On this break, we have Tracy Cruz, who is from the Bay Area of California with Emotional Love and Flowers and Candy. And then we have Fred Johnson III with After Dark. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.
To do, my heart is so confused. In the past it's been put down, it's been shattered, and then I'm left without any clue to know the real truth about what I found. But with you I found my common ground. You're the one that makes me emotional, 'cause you're the one that makes me feel emotional. You make me feel that love is real. Say makes you strong when everything goes wrong and you can't go on. I believe the love you have for me surpassed infinity. That's why you're all I see. You're the one that makes me emotional, 'cause you're the one that makes me feel so emotional. change. Your love rained all over me. It was blissful, so special, essential. Life poetry, true beauty. We created, we made it. Reality, pure affection with expression. A connection was meant to be. You make me feel so good inside, like therapy for my mind. You make me feel so good inside. It was like flowers and candy, understanding how you're standing really must be love. I'm talking true, I'm talking real, and I felt it in my heart. It was like flowers and candy, understanding how you're standing really must be love. I'm talking true, I'm talking real, and I felt it in my heart and soul. You make me feel so good inside. You make me feel so good inside.
Now what is this that's happening? I don't even know you anymore. Oh, yeah. Changes moving through every day. Yeah. And I don't even know what we're fighting for.
Our bright days turn to sleepless nights. Our loving ways have turned to endless fights, and we can't seem to compromise. We try so hard to make things right. Yesterday, we'll erase all some turns. Can't we turn back love? Hands outside. You are my life.
Now what is really happening? Yeah.
Changes are moving through everything. Changes.
It's in the stone, forever, forever after. It doesn't matter what I say. Rude and fatal, lacking the hint of conscience. No matter what I say, after dark.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight we are joined by Andrei Knight and Oksana Lovich, and we're talking about so many interesting things, dealing with energies within us and outside of us, and Jedis, like, they really do exist. Welcome back, you guys, and thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight and entertaining our minds and our thoughts.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be on your show.
I've really had a great time so far. I'm learning so much from you guys.
Thank you.
So before we went to break, we were talking about pyramids, and it's known that the pyramids actually line up with certain celestial events. Do you think this is a way that it derives power? What do you think the whole alignment with the stars is?
Because truly a pyramid, it's the whole world system. If we think about it, pyramid, it's like a pointed up, right? And what is the journey of life truly? It's going up and achieving
Ascending.
that. Yes, it's achieving that apex. For example, Egyptian people understood mysticism, they understood the power of the world, how to read the world, and symbolism. And that's why they were building so many pyramids. But truly, our company is apex. It's also a pyramid, because pyramid has so many different meanings, but most of them, it's achieving that apex and showing that there will be steps. Because people who want to have results in one day, I think even magic doesn't work that fast. That's why we live, to feel that sense of accomplishments that we've...
Well, magic requires persistent rituals.
Yes, and steps.
Mm-hmm.
And the more steps that you make, the closer you reach that apex. And especially doing any meditation or rituals in a pyramid is very powerful, because truly, if you see how the energy gathers, it takes that much energy from the earth, right? It's connected to the earth always, and then it goes directly to the sky. So it connects the sky and the earth, so as above, so below.
That's absolutely what they were for. Yeah, we assume that they only served one purpose, but that's us. We assume the Egyptians are older, so they must be more primitive. We today build buildings for one function per building. They use them for many functions. Mm-hmm. The geographic location made them perfect, just like Tesla's Tower in New Jersey. The geographic conditions under the ground are very similar to the Giza Plateau. So you have an underground river that's flowing through crystalline fissures, and that generates electrical current. We use the same principle in our digital watches by putting quartz crystals inside of them. So the current is generated naturally. The pyramid focuses that energy. Okay, so you have one purpose would be generating power, but as long as you have a building that's collecting, generating, and focusing power, you can put people inside of it for healing, for initiation, for helping their higher consciousness reach out. And that's exactly it. If you look at it from a design standpoint, and you look at a cross-section of the pyramids, the way the chambers are laid out and the air shafts makes no sense. Well, they're not symmetrical. They're not mirror images of each other. They break every design rule that we use today, because they weren't made to be a pretty or symmetrical design. When you're standing in the king's chamber, each shaft points to a particular star system during certain points of the year. One points to Sirius, one points to Orion, one points to Lyra. And if you look at a lot of the lore concerning extraterrestrial beings, every planet that we assume races are visiting us from or have visited us from is exactly one of the star systems that an air shaft points to. And again, the papyruses talk about a pharaoh having to lay in this quote-unquote sarcophagus and project his consciousness outside of his body to merge with the consciousness of a star. We keep guessing and speculating about these things, but the Egyptians wrote it down for us. The key is we have to stop looking at these things as myths and stories and see what they were inspired by.
So, this show is really well timed as far as with the Star Wars movie coming out. So is it true that the Jedi aren't just fictional characters?
Absolutely. We have writings, and it's not anything you would expect to be, it's not like the Dead Sea Scrolls where it's this mysterious book of ancient wisdom. It's a log book that, like, the doorkeeper kept when people made appointments to see the pharaoh. And it records, it's called the Westcar Papyrus, and it records Khufu, the pharaoh Khufu, meeting with what is described as a Djed wizard. And they discuss the designs of, among many things, the designs of the pyramid. There's another pharaoh that calls for his Djed to ask him about the mysteries of life. To share with him, he's feeling depressed. Like, is this all there is? I sit on the throne every day and people adore and worship me. There was a pharaoh that actually became very, very bored with life. And he called for a Djed wizard to teach him higher meanings, higher purpose. So this stuff is actually recorded. Where the speculative part comes in, and this is a big part of my research, Tessa, I believe that the Templar Order of today is directly tied to the Jedi of Egypt. That the Jedi existed back then, we have no doubt about it. It's recorded in the Egyptians' own documents. That the Sisterhood of the Rose or the Temple of Isis existed is recorded in their own documents. Where the speculative part comes in, and I don't think it's speculative, I think there's a lot of evidence that points to it, is that these orders have survived right on down to modern times, just under different names. Because when I became initiated into the Templar Order, we started studying, guess what? A lot of Egyptian history, a lot of Hermetic magical teachings. And I'm like, well, the Templars, I think Europe, and I think the Crusades in the Holy Land. Why are we studying Egypt? This seems unrelated, but the more we studied, the more related it became. And everything that I have been able to dig up about Jedi and what their rituals that they performed and learned at the time is exactly like what I learned as a Templar. So I believe the Templars weren't born in the Temple of Solomon. That's just where they took that name. But their order is much older, probably much older than even Egypt itself, because there's Persian legends that are about 20,000 years old that talk about the Nart Knights. And the Nart Knights cultivated and used a personal force that they called the Fa. And it was this force that united all things, their exact words. So we tend to see the same story over and over and over again. And if you remember what Star Wars says at the beginning of every movie, right, it's not the future, it's not science fiction. The very first thing you see in a Star Wars movie is a long, long time ago. This is the past. This is our history, in other words.
I also believe because the movie teaches us so much. It's almost like a book of psychology and enlightenment. It cannot be possibly a complete fantasy. And even if it is fiction in this complete world, what I mean, like the character that are chosen, there are Jedis in the past who had similar paths, maybe just a little different story. You know what I mean? It's not like exactly those events from the movie happened in the past, but there were people who were like fighting with dark forces and still fighting in this point. And there are real life Jedi like Andrei, who is not doing it with the, is not doing it as what is the name of, let me remember, martial arts skills. A movie shows you the actual physical activity, right? That people are going to a different planet, to places that we don't even know exist. But in real life, the same things are happening, just not in that degree.
Not that literally, but in a different way.
Yeah, in a different way. For example, Andrei, he wants to change the world, right? and he has this mystical power. So he's
I
a
think you
Jedi.
too.
Yes,
Isn't
but
that
what I
one
mean,
that?
like right now, I'm talking about Jedi, right?
Uh-huh.
So you're actually doing the same thing. It's just in different forms. You're awakening people.
Well, interestingly,
sharing your knowledge through different ways, and actually fighting with dark forces in a new way. Because when you awaken and enlighten more people, they get less influenced by fears, worries, and that's actually how the dark forces feed their energy.
well, even in the movies, what does Yoda say is the path to the dark side? Fear. And ignorance. His exact words. When we talk about darkness, we
Yes.
talk about the darkness of fear and ignorance. If you look at anything perpetuated that's bad in the world, whether it's war or theft, or why does somebody do something bad to another human being? It's because they themselves are coming from a fear and lack mentality, right? Them over there, we better clobber them before they come and invade us, right? Or I'm poor and there's no way I can make any money, so I have to steal it from others. It all comes from a lack mentality. Rape and abuse. I am not enough by myself, so I have to take it from others. It all comes from a fear and lack mentality. That is literally the path to the dark side. And it's interesting. And the opposite to that, by the way, is a feeling of abundance and love. This feeling that, I mean, why shouldn't energy be free? We now know that physical matter is only 5% of the universe. The rest is this stuff called dark matter, which behaves more like energy than matter, and the stuff we call dark energy. We don't know what it is. But 95% of the universe is energy, only 5% physical matter. Yet here on this planet, we've developed this idea of scarcity to keep each other constantly in competition with each other and afraid of each other. And what did they say is the best way to conquer, right? Divide and conquer. So we see it played out. And it's interesting that you brought up martial arts. That really was my path. It's interesting that we're doing this show right on the same weekend as the last Star Wars movie came out, because it really was the movie that started me on my path. I'm old enough. I remember going to see the first movie when it came out, and the lights dim, and that spaceship flies over your head. I kid you not, Tessa, I peed my pants in that moment, and I'm just like, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. Keep in mind, we didn't have CGI in the 70s. We didn't have all this stuff now that people take for granted. You didn't see spaceships every day. My life changed in that moment, and in my inner being, in my heart, I knew this isn't just fiction. This is a calling. There's something that inspired this. And my whole life, like, it seems like I studied a few diverse areas, but really I haven't. My whole life has been to find the real life Jedi. And my quest started with martial arts, okay? These Zen masters in the mountains of Japan, well, they seem like they have something like ESP, and my quest started with martial arts. I guess I was a young boy. But as I got older, I became less and less interested in the physical and the fighting stuff. You know, meditation for me in the beginning was that boring 5 minutes of class before we get to the cool stuff. We have to do it because the teacher says.
Right.
But as I got older, the mental stuff became much, much more interesting than all of this physical stuff. And that's really kind of what I've been developing now, is exercises and techniques for developing the mental side of it, the Jedi mind tricks, if you will. And the one thing I found is it's not something you're born with. It's not something for a chosen elite few. And this is where I broke with the Templar Order. You know, I got quite a few comments on Facebook, by the way, when we started publicizing the show. A lot of Templars and Freemasons and Hermetic Golden Dawn type people came out of the woodwork, and they're like, brother, are you sure you should be talking about this in public? Hey, don't you know the first rule of the Templar is you don't announce yourself publicly as a Templar? And hey, these are hidden teachings for a reason, you know? And it's like, this is part of where I broke with the Templar Order, because I don't believe this information is for a chosen few. I believe it's meant for everybody. Anybody can learn to do this stuff. They just haven't been shown how. Imagine we had a class in elementary school about developing your mental and psychic abilities. You know, if we started young the way the Tibetans do with their children. Everybody's got this ability. I believe the world got into the state it's in because a lot of the information that could really help people has been kept hidden and secret. And I can understand why that was. Okay? I can understand why that was, because look at the calamity of Atlantis. Again, the psychic disease before the physical manifested, and look at now with earthquakes, hurricanes being on the rise. Part of that is climate change, okay? Whether you believe it's man-made or natural, I personally believe it's a little of both, which is why it's twice as much of an issue. But it's not just the climate change, it's our psychic things. The more we live in fear and anger and doubt and suspicion of the other person, the more wars there are on the planet, the more conflict and fear there is on the planet, the more earthquakes and hurricanes we're going to have. The planet is merely responding to the energy that we put out. In Atlantis, imagine a society full of psychics. It got out of control. It resulted in a physical cataclysm that sank the continent. Okay? But this has all happened before. I believe if you want to avoid kind of where we seem to be heading, the way you do it is by waking people up, not by keeping this information hidden. They kept it hidden back then because they feared another Atlantis. I believe we're coming out of the Dark Yuga now. We're in a position where humanity can not only handle this knowledge, but put it to good use.
Yeah, it seems like fear and other things are on an uprise. But as far as spiritually, it seems like kids and even adults are being spiritually awakened and looking for answers and building upon that.
There's kids already being born fully awake. We had the indigo generation and now the crystalline kids, the new generation being born. The word Christ in Jesus Christ, it wasn't a last name, it was a title. Christ comes from crystalline consciousness. It means someone who's directly in tune and can download directly. So now these kids, when we say the kids are born with a crystalline consciousness, it's basically literally kids are being born with the level of consciousness that Jesus Christ reached in his 33rd year after meditating in the desert. Kids are being born with it today. Things are accelerating and speeding up. I've never believed that making knowledge public is a bad thing. I believe only good things can come from it. Here again, the path to dark side is what? Ignorance and fear. People live in fear because of ignorance. So let's take the veil off. Let's let everybody know what they're really capable of, what their birthright and their destiny really is. We weren't put on this planet to worship gods, Tessa. The big hidden teaching of the Templars, and I believe of the Jedi as well, here it is. It's that we have the capacity to become gods, not worship them.
We are gods.
Yeah.
We have it all inside.
That's the big secret.
And
we all have the light of God within us.
Because we also, the church teaches us to look upper somewhere for the knowledge and information, almost like obeying. And I believe it's also coming from fear, because when we realize that we and God and Goddess and I are truly one, and through us the universe manifests beautiful things, it's not that we need to obey something, we just need to open up a channel, we need to remove all obstacles like fears, worries, uncertainty, learn how to become still in our mind, and then we become God. Then any desire that we have, we manifest effortlessly, because it's not coming from our ego, it's not coming from the desire to prove something, it's not coming from the desire to hurt someone. It's something that you love to do, something you're so passionate about, and you cannot imagine your life without it.
It's in the Bible itself, John 14:12. Jesus is saying, even greater miracles than I are you destined to perform. See, the whole idea, what he was teaching was how to become like him, that he wasn't anything special. He was teaching people how to become miracle workers themselves. That's why he had to be silenced very quickly by the powers that be. The church that grew out later, what they teach is very different than what he himself taught. And that's actually the Templars themselves, because they were the champions of the Crusades, right? They went to free the Holy Lands from the heathens back in the day. But then the story a lot of people might not be aware of is the Templars came back as heroes, but eventually were burned at the stake by the Roman Church.
Right.
Roman Church, right? Because the Pope came they came back and the Pope said, well, congratulations, you guys. Thank you for serving me. And they're like, well, we don't serve you and we don't serve the church. We serve who we thought you served.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the schism came. Mary Magdalene, interestingly enough, Mary Magdalene was actually a member of the Sisterhood of the Rose. Jesus had many teachers throughout his life, not just the three wise men early on. She was a sister of the Rose. And the Notre Dame Cathedral wasn't originally a Catholic cathedral. It was actually a temple built by the Templars in honor of Mary Magdalene. Because Notre Dame in French means Our Lady. So it was the temple of Our Lady, Mary Magdalene, honoring her for her service and her life. She was a healer who healed many people, not just Jesus, using sexual energy, which is what they taught in the Temple of Isis. And that's why it's kind of a hush-hush, frowned-upon topic now, because we tend to view it as a dirty thing. But back then it was a form of healing, a form of enlightening, a form of awakening people. But she was actually a member of the sisterhood, and this is all, you can imagine why this does not fit with the teachings of the church, which is why in the 1300s and the 1400s there was a lot of women who they at the time called witches. They were priestesses, but they called them witches, and a lot of Templar knights who were burned at the stake at the steps of, ironically, Notre Dame, the very temple that they built themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to pyramids, I can hear myself. I don't know if the speaker's up loud or what. But Nikki was asking what kind of metals, crystals, etc., which are creating these energy fields under a pyramid form. She also continued a little later on, and she said she's talking about in Egypt, but since there are other energy fields possibly all over the earth, then do these minerals, crystals, and metals have to create only one type of energy field? For example, to be able to put that energy field for other purposes other than healing?
This is where we humans come in. The earth generates the energy, and we're like the lens. We focus it and filter it and direct it and aim it. We're not something separate from our earth. We are a part of that process, and we work through it. And you're absolutely right. Pyramids have been built all over the world. Power spots exist all over the world. They found pyramids now in Bosnia. They were debating, they're much larger and they would be much older than the Egyptian pyramids, and they were debating whether they're mountains that happen to look like pyramids or if they're pyramids that happen to look like mountains because they got overgrown with vegetation. Well, that debate was put to rest when they used ground-penetrating radar and found all sorts of man-made tunnels inside and underneath, just like on the Giza Plateau. We now know there's pyramids in North America, in China, Cambodia. They were built all over the world. Stonehenge is not just a magical spot because some druids built a ring there. The druids chose that spot to build a ring because of the energy that was already there. The ring just harnesses and focuses it, and it's part of the equation. The human beings with their bodies, because we are energy. We channel energy because we're made of condensed energy. All matter is. So you put the beings inside of the structure doing the ritual, that's the full picture. The Holy Trinity, right? So it's always three. So it's the energy that comes out of the ground, it's the structure that collects it and focuses, and then it's what the people do with their own energy in that place. During certain points of the year, during certain astrological alignments, it's not a bunch of separate parts, it's all pieces of one system.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you mentioned Stonehenge, and just recently a friend of ours and a listener of the show, Jim Morris from Scotland, said there's not just one, but there's three Stonehenge in Scotland, and they're actually dated back pre when the Druids came.
And Stonehenge also, yeah. It's ease of definition to be able to name a people. But yeah, same with Egypt. We say the Egyptians built the pyramids. The people we call Egyptians, in other words, the settlers of the Nile Valley, in their own writings record seeing the pyramids upon arriving. So yeah, a lot of these terms like Egyptians, Druids, it's just to put a location in their mind, convenience of language. I believe they're much older, both the stone circles in England and Scotland and the pyramids in Egypt. They're much, much older. We know already the water erosion marks, for example. This isn't from the banks of the Nile overflowing, it's saltwater erosion. So you have to think back to when the last time the Sahara Desert was under an ocean.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we're saying tens of thousands of years, not just thousands of years, because the last time it would have been under the ocean would have been 12,000 years ago when the Ice Age melted, but then the Sphinx wouldn't be facing Leo. And we know that everything in Egypt is built according to astronomical alignments. So either they made an oopsie, or we have to go back to the Ice Age before that, which would place it about 40,000 years ago. Then you had it underwater, and you were facing Leo beforehand. So, yeah, absolutely. A lot of our dates have to be pushed back because modern archaeology is really built upon the premise that the further you go back in time, the more primitive people got. They had to use these wooden wheels and these levers to hoist the rocks up. No, maybe they had levitation sound technology. You know, the two biggest lies that have been propagated onto modern people are that there's nothing to study in history because people were more primitive and that we are all separate. Those are the two biggest lies we have to set straight. We can learn a lot from these ancient cultures because they go back much further than we give them credit for. They had much more advanced technology, and not all of it was silicon. A lot of it was mental and psychic, which is what makes it more advanced. They were far more advanced than we were. We can learn a lot from them, and the basic lesson they can teach us is that we are not separate, and yes, energy is real, and yes, we are magical.
Yeah, Nikki said in the chat room that someone had told her that Stonehenge isn't actually in its original position. I've never heard that before.
Interesting, and that wouldn't surprise me, actually. Maybe in an attempt to hide some ancient knowledge, because this doorway to the Temple of Abagos had a totally different facade on it. And that's been carbon dated to about 2,000 years. So 2,000 years ago, somebody had plastered over it. Didn't want us to know what was there. And if it wasn't for this earthquake, we wouldn't have discovered it. These spaceship-looking hieroglyphics. So it wouldn't surprise me that they moved it. Did you know that when you look at the chakra chart in any yoga studio, we're all used to seeing the rainbow, the 7 dots? They're in the wrong spots. Yes, there's 7 energy centers in the body, but they're not quite where they're always pictured. And that makes you kind of wonder,
Is that to keep us misaligned? Exactly, to keep us safe, because that way it's much easier to sell us iPhones and whatever the next plastic gadget is, to keep you worried about the sports scores and your favorite team losing or what the Kardashians are up to this week. Exactly. It makes society run much smoother and with far less change if everybody thinks that's all there is. You keep us from looking into the past. You keep us from looking into our spiritual selves, and that's exactly it. And the church, just like a hospital, I brought my cat in recently for an estimate for a procedure, and there's all this other stuff. This much for this medication, this much for the pre-op blood screen, and this, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, well, they told me the surgery would be just $150. This is almost $1,000 I'm looking at. And my friend said, well, a hospital is also a business. Right.
The same has to be said for the government and the church. I'm sorry to say this, but it's true. The church has a vested interest in staying in business, in remaining a church. The government has a vested interest in remaining a government. If you went and found spiritual enlightenment, you wouldn't need your church or your priest anymore.
Right.
So their job is to keep you searching, not to help you find. And same goes with the government. All of this stuff is basic, and I'm not saying it like a big nefarious conspiracy born of evil. Sure, there's some greed involved. Sure, there's some fear and lack mentality involved, of course. But it's mainly for our own good. To keep things kind of humming along smoothly, you have to minimize change and radical ideas. And by radical, I don't mean throwing bombs and burning down buildings. By radical, I mean that we are all energy, that we are all connected, that we can all awaken and become gods, that Jesus Christ was nothing unique. He was trying to teach us to be more like him, which is why the authorities of the time had to silence him as quickly as possible. And he wasn't the only one by any means. You know, we have Buddha, we have Krishna. Every culture has had a great teacher, and I bet they were all teaching the very same things.
It's just I feel like their message, people were not prepared for their message yet. It was so new, like at this world right now, right? Self-help and awakening, enlightenment subjects are discussed widely everywhere, and some people deny them, some people accept them. But at that time when Buddha and Christ, the message was so shocking, and you know how when people are unprepared, it's misunderstood. It can be strongly misunderstood and rejected. And the same is about church. I believe that church is like looking the answer outside of yourself. It's like Osho said that people go searching without a map, but then they actually need to get that map to return, because they are kind of going away from their path. They are not going within. It's like also that story about a Tantra teacher and this boy who's been studying meditation for years and years through public places, right? But then when he met this woman, she never studied meditation, and she told him, I don't think you know anything about meditation. And he said, how can you ever tell me this? I've been studying it all my life. She said, well, I don't see it in you. You may study, you may know the theory, but do you really use that theory? Do you really become meditation? You teach that, you tell people what to do, but do you truly are able to be still? Are you able to feel this moment? Are you able to be present? And when you go to organizations like churches, I believe that it's looking the answers from outside of yourself and pushing yourself away from the spiritual path. It's my opinion.
I think I know the story you're referring to. She also said something like, I don't practice meditation, I am meditation.
Yeah. And what she meant, she was actually showed him how present she was, because some people, it's a story, I don't remember who told this story, but there was a person, he decided to learn how to meditate. So he went to the temple, and he was staying in the temple for 5 years. 5 years.
Holy shnikes.
So he ate right, sometimes he was not eating at all, and he was simply meditating. Then it came time that he needed to go. So he needed to fly back where he came from, and in the airport he was standing in the wrong line. Then he actually found out that he was almost late to his plane, but he went to another line and he was again in the wrong line. So he's been meditating for 5 years, but he found himself completely out of control. He was angry, he was screaming at everyone in the airport.
That's his first test.
And that's what I mean, that meditation is not the actual practice. It's powerful to do that for 10 minutes a day. Meditation, it's a state of being, is training yourself not to be triggered by the world, by the world's turbulences.
Yeah,
that's
there's a
the
big
actual meditation.
Like we said at the top of the show, it would be the eye in the middle of the storm.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a big difference between learning something and, like you said, putting it into practice.
Very true, yeah. And that's what we all work on. That's our quest through life. And, the churches, all these secret organizations, they had their function. They kept this sacred knowledge safe for us. Imagine if it would have been destroyed in some stupid war in the middle of the Middle Ages. They kept this knowledge safe so it could be passed down to us. But I think the best way to keep it safe now is to make it public. The best way to save our world is to make it public, to wake more people up. Oksana said that this has been my big quest, and in a way it has. I was a hedge fund manager in a former life. I was fortunate enough to make a lot of money very early on. I would say lucky, but it wasn't really luck. Even back then, I was bending reality and being sure of my outcomes. And actually, I used a lot of sacred geometry mathematics back then when I was predicting market prices. But I always promised myself that if I came to money, I would want to do good. I would, please just help me. When I was starving, I'm like, please just help me earn a little money. I promise I'll donate to charity. So when I came to money, I wanted to make good on my promise, and I started researching charities to donate to. And I very quickly became overwhelmed, Tessa. It's like, where do you start? It's in my mind now. But it's like, where do you start? Do you save the dolphins and forget about the children? Do you help the children and forget about the environment? Like, I don't have that much money. Where do I start? And I realized none of us can really save the world on our own. Like I said, the universe doesn't work like that. It's meant to create interaction between its molecules, between its parts, and between its beings. The way you save the world, I decided my role, my mission in life would be to teach people the same meditation and energy techniques that woke me up. Because if you look back in history, the way anyone's really succeeded in changing the world is they raised an army. So I decided my purpose on this planet is just to wake people up. I don't know what they're going to do with their knowledge, with their newfound abilities. I'm just going to trust in human nature. I don't believe in this barbarism and killing each other. I believe that comes again from ignorance and fear. And the very nature of these teachings is that they make you unignorant and more aware. So I believe by teaching them, there can be no bad part, because part of teaching it is you're helping create the sort of human that would act out of kindness and out of love instead of out of competition. You see what I mean? The very act of studying the teachers changes you. Right. So maybe I'm wrong, but I believe, I don't know how to change the world. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a brilliant doctor. My talent is waking people up. And I trust once they're awake together, we can create the wave of change that we're all kind of waiting for and seeking.
And what an honorable thing to be able to do. And I had a person come to me once and tell me that I woke them up, and
you probably wake lots of people up every show, yeah.
I didn't even realize it. I was like, wow. And that's before I started doing the show. It's when I was doing, paranormal investigation and such. And it was a guy that used to help people psychically, so on and so forth, but he shut down. And then I came along. Somehow we found each other, and I woke him up again. And he, found so much happiness in that, going out there and helping people again and waking other people up himself. I think it's the biggest, one of the biggest honors you can have, but just being there for each other, raising each other up and sharing your light and your energy and, your education. And it is hard. Somebody said in the chat room earlier, when you say these certain things, it goes against what people believe deeply as far as their religious beliefs and such. And, I did find solace a lot of times in my life when, I felt like there was nothing else, and I did go back to my church and my religion. But I find peace in the world around me. My church is in the forest, or in my children, or, different aspects of my life is where I find my church, my spirituality. I'm not religious. I'm now spiritual, and I find more peace in that. I'm happier.
That's interesting you say that. A friend of mine who's a Catholic priest, actually, he told me once, religion is going to church and thinking about going fishing. A priest told me this. And spirituality is going fishing and finding God.
Right.
And we're not for or against anyone or any teaching. I want to stress this. If anything, my goal is to show people the commonality amongst all teachings. Here again, divide, conquer. There's no reason for anybody to hate anybody based on religious beliefs, because I believe they were all trying to teach us the very same things. In all likelihood, Jesus was a Templar, or certainly had interactions with them. He was visited by 3 Jedi. He was married to a Sisterhood of the Rose member. This isn't anything against the church. If anything, it's reinforcing their teachings and showing you kind of the history of what inspired them. And this isn't just limited to Christianity. Did you know in the Muslim faith, Allah means the light?
Right.
That's all it means, the light. they're worshiping the light. So it's the same thing. It's the terminology that we trip over. It's the models, like Oksana said, maybe people weren't quite ready for the knowledge, so it had to be taught through story and allegory to help people better understand it, you know? And we started taking the allegory literally and then arguing with each other over it, when really all these stories were meant to teach us the very same things. So I want to stress that we're not for or against anyone. We're for everybody finding their own inner truth. The only thing I would say I'd be against is if any doctrine or anything causes you to stop looking within. If you stop just at the doctrine, that's where it kind of stops serving you. Whatever you study, whatever tradition, use it as a bouncing off point, but go within. The truth always comes from within, and if you feel something intuitively, trust it, and it's right. A lot of people are like, well, I don't know if this is true. Like, it must have been for you with the Sisterhood of the Rose, because a lot of what they study is tantric in nature. And you come from Russia, which is a very closed society. Did you kind of ever have that thing where, like, it's sexuality, it's healing, but it's also sexuality, it's dirty? Did you ever kind of have that doubt on your journey?
So I was always very highly sexual, always.
Okay.
Always, like.
I feel you, sister.
Yeah. And my family, I don't want to exactly say who, but like they were constantly mentioning me as very dirty person.
Oh.
It was just like they would tricked me into believing that something was wrong with me because I was such an intense desire
You have to understand, the Russian culture is very closed. Homosexuality is almost illegal. It's not like Saudi Arabia where they stone homosexuals, but the police are legally allowed to harass them. It's not illegal on the books, but it almost is. So it's a very sexually closed society. You have to keep that context in mind.
So in Russia, I was extremely sexual, but then I guess because of those pictures that I got from my family and other people, I completely closed up. So because it's that's how we work. If we are judged and if people repress who we are, sometimes we close that part of ourselves and we don't think something is wrong. Because I was just concentrating on self-love and removing my negative beliefs. But then I again came back to Tantra, to my sexual power, and that's when I felt like all the things that I've done before that, they were put into the right places.
Because life suddenly made sense.
Yeah, because as I mentioned before, it's like if you dismiss your sexuality, you create disbalance in you. So it's one of the most important part of you. It's who you are. So,
well, that is energy. When people come to me and they say, I don't know if I believe in all this new age energy stuff, I'm like, have you ever been sexually aroused? Have you ever felt an orgasm? Guess what? That's energy. You got in touch with your energy body.
And dismissing an energy, it's like being arrogant. And what Yoda said, if you are arrogant to the knowledge, you will give yourself to the dark forces. And that's what I mean. People who are ignorant to this knowledge, they suffer themselves, they create painful experiences, tragedies, and then they also blame the universe for this. They feel like they're victims, but truly it's all in your hands. You have the power to live the most beautiful life possible, even if you have turbulences. As Andrei said, if you win 90% of the time, you already win. You don't have to truly be 100% always at peace and serene and happy. I actually don't believe it's completely possible. I do believe the most awakened and enlightened person will still have some time when may some not work. It's just how fast you come out of it and how much you learn from it. Because I believe each little turbulence in your life actually can take you even higher.
Jedi teachings are not about avoiding negative emotions or negative energy. It's more about how quickly you can rebalance yourself when you experience them and not being sucked into it. Because truly, we're all magicians, we're all wizards. those of us that are struggling are not realizing that our struggle and tension is creating exactly the tension and struggle that we're frustrated by.
Right? So true.
We're all manifesting, we're all creating. That's why I think it's important for people to be aware of their abilities, because otherwise it's like lightning shooting out in all directions and then coming back and zapping us in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you didn't have the bad, you wouldn't know what good is, and you do have to have that balance of good.
Very true.
Or light and dark, as it would be in the Jedi world.
Well, in the Star Wars movies, Anakin Skywalker, Luke's father, who eventually becomes Darth Vader, the prophecy around his birth was that he would bring balance to the Force.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So everybody assumed he would be this savior. The prophecy never said he would be a savior. They said he would bring balance to the Force. And here you have this peaceful, harmonic society ruled by the Jedi Order. Maybe they needed a little taste of the dark side to bring the balance back.
Yeah.
They misinterpreted the prophecy.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines is, "Come to the dark side, we have cookies." But
have
it is important. It is important to have that because there's so many things you wouldn't know or learn due to it. And I was thinking also about lightsabers. And in my mind, lightsabers are different energies. And like you said earlier, different powers that you have. Each Jedi has their own different power. So their lightsabers are different colors due to that specific
reason. And what is color?
reason.
It's a right. Color is a frequency of light.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that note, boys and girls, we do have to go to our second musical break. We have Tracy Cruz again with Electricity and Joyful Rain. And then we have Fred Johnson III, one of my favorites, with Sugar. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this musical break.
Your love empowers me. It gives me the energy to move beyond my capabilities. There is no limit to what your love can do.
I feel chemistry whenever you're close to me, and I cannot explain your energy, 'cause you're pulling me like gravity. It feels so strong, I can't not escape your electricity. This rush can
microphone. I receive what you say to me.
burger.
Welcome back. We are Paradox Media listeners to Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight we have Andrei and Oksana on the show with us, teaching about our energy and the real-life Jedi, myths and lore. Welcome back, you guys, and thanks so much for joining us tonight and educating us with all of this amazing information you're giving us.
Oh, thank you, Tessa. It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for having us. I thought of something during the commercial break because back then temp was a profession that was honored more than doctors or lawyers, and even kings went to consult them. So a lot has kind of changed in our society, and this is just one example because, like we said earlier, sexual energy is really our energy. It's the energy of creation. It's the energy of life. It's what magic and life force really is. So to teach us to be ashamed of it and to suppress it, it seems wrong. That seems dirty to me.
Right, and I agree with you. Like, okay, so when I was younger, after my mother passed, and my mother was the spiritual side of me, she could see and communicate with spirits. She even knew when she was going to die how she wanted her funeral. And the door got closed on me after my dad had abandoned us, and then my aunt and uncle came and took us into their home and took such good care of us. But my aunt, who's now my mom because she adopted me this last May, she is so afraid of the paranormal, and I would share my stories with, my peers or my cousins, and I told my cousin the story, and she ran back and told Aunt Sandy about it, and then she was like, that's just your imagination, that's not true, that's not real, and quit telling my kids this stuff. So it kind of shut that door on the paranormal for me, even though I still had effects of staying up really late. I couldn't sleep because I'm expecting something to happen. It closed the door for me, and I stayed in what I call the paranormal closet until 2012, when I didn't care what anybody thought anymore. And I was so proud of what I was doing, and I'm helping people, and I'm reconnecting with my mom's side of the family. And I told my Aunt Vicky and my Uncle Marshall about what I'm doing. And, they're in the Bible Belt, and she told me, what makes you think God's going to protect you when you're doing this because you're communing with demons, so on and so forth. And I feel like God gave me this gift for a reason, and for me to just put it up on the shelf, to put it on a shelf and neglect it and not build upon this gift that God gave me is more of a sin than what you're saying that I'm doing is wrong.
That would be the sin, to miss the target. Right. We're not given gifts without, or the desire to use them without it being for some higher purpose. You have to trust in that. And something I found, whether you decide to probe on this or not, and if you do, you'll have to do it delicately, but in my experience, people who completely deny the paranormal like that, it's not because they've never had an experience. It's usually because they have abilities or an experience that scared the total willies out of them. So they shut the door on that part of themselves for good.
Well, yeah,
it's not from a lack of experience. It's usually from a very powerful experience.
Yeah, and she's very religious. And I even told her during this conversation on the phone, I'm like, even in the Bible, Jesus says, "It is I, Jesus. I am not a ghost. It is me, Jesus." And he didn't say, "It is I, Jesus, not a demon." He said, "It is I, Jesus, and not a ghost." So yeah, like that to me is proof. And there's so many people I know that believe that all spirits are demons and they're here to fool you and make you think other things. But I just agree to disagree. But yeah, like you said,
it's what you attract. There's positive energies, there's negative energies, and good and evil is really oversimplifying it. I really like the model that we mentioned earlier. There's love and abundance on one side, there's fiercity, scarcity, and lack on the other. So like a demon that might take your energy or suck your soul, well, what are they made of? They're made of lack. So the only way they can get energy is by taking it from others. You see, there's spirits that have an abundance of energy to share, and there's spirits that need to take energy. What kind you attract to you depends on what's inside your heart. If your heart is full of scarcity and fear and lack, you're going to attract entities and thought forms that are themselves made of scarcity, fear, and lack.
And it's what you fill yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people say, like, I've had a client, he said, oh, I'm like not feeling well, even though he has a lot of money. He said, I constantly cannot stop thinking, and I have constant fear of losing all my money. Mm-hmm. And then we discussed with him how he lives his life, right? First thing in the morning, he watches the news. Last thing at night, he watches the news, and he said, well, I need it for my business. Then I say, what else? Like, I'm talking to him, Mike, and he said, and then I go to work. I work up to 10 hours each day. I don't even have time to go to the gym because I have so much work. And he's around 60 years old. And I'm like, wow, how can you expect to feel any balance, bliss, happiness, and abundance if all you do, you even work from the fear?
You know, this is
Working
a big
10
part.
hours a day at 6 years old, it's coming from fear.
Right.
Losing everything. That's why you need to constantly gain.
Right.
That's the time to balance. To where are you, like, seriously, like, that person is not like really rich. He's extremely rich. There is enough money to live his whole life, not to work anymore. But he chooses to work non-stop, not go to the gym, watch the news, and of course he can never have that feeling of peace. And it's because what he fills himself with. It's his choice.
When your heart is lack, no matter how much you have, there will always be a fear of losing it. There will always be that fear of not enough. Marisa Peer, who you studied with, I saw a video where she was discussing a millionaire client also who would put his arms around his plate when he ate.
Oh, wow.
Because when he was an orphan, in an orphanage, kids used to pick on him and beat him up and steal his food.
Right.
And now he's a millionaire. I mean, this guy can have cars up the wazoo if he wanted, but every time he has one plate of food, his only fear is losing it. So he literally, his wife dreaded going to public restaurants with him because he would put his arms around his plate like in a protective posture when he ate, and she was embarrassed to eat in public with him.
That's so
That's
sad.
how strong this fear of scarcity can be, that even when you have the whole world, you fear losing it.
And when you have a fear of scarcity, truly you are not abundant because you are looking outside of yourself. It's what Edgar Tolle said. There was a homeless man. He was asking for money, and there was a monk or some enlightened person was walking by, and he said, please check out your bag. He said, I know there is nothing in my bag. And he said, please check it. When he checked it, there were lots of gold coins in it.
Oh, wow.
And this example exactly tells you that when you're looking outside of yourself, when you're asking for anything, you're actually not abundant. Because you don't really know that you have that abundance.
True abundance comes from within.
And when you do have that fear, like, even if you're not consciously doing it, subconsciously, you can be sabotaging yourself. And I finally came to a realization, like, every time I find happiness, I subconsciously self-sabotage, and I destroy it because I just had that inner belief that I didn't deserve happiness because I never attained it. Through my life, everything I loved was taken from me. And then once I realized that, I was so free, and I felt so much better. And it was so good to get rid of that fear, that weight on your shoulders that's holding you back from your full potential.
Exactly. And sadly, in the Bible Belt, you know, people don't come to religion because they feel moved and called. They come there because of the fear of God. There it is, the fear. So if all of your beliefs are founded on a state of fear, of course, if you attempt to contact the spirit world in any way, shape, or form, you're going to attract the more fearful entities. You see? Whereas there's other traditions where they aspire to be able to talk to their ancestors, the ascended masters. And even in Christianity, for every demon, you also have a guardian angel, right? So why do you assume the worst, that you're going to attract some evil entity to trick you or deceive you? Why not come from a knowing that you're going to attract higher knowledge that's going to help you on your path?
And when you have that fear or that anxiety or depression or whatnot, that's when the negative things like to find you. You don't have to be a paranormal investigator or put yourself in this situation. You could be at a music fest or somewhere, and there's a dark entity or spirit that sees you that's like, wow, that looks like a nice, tasty buffet. I could get all kinds of negative energy off that person, and you don't even realize
Exactly.
it.
They're attracted to the fear. Exactly. That's what they seek out. You're like a beacon for them.
Right.
And I know people that see ghosts that have had nothing but positive experiences. Yeah,
So
it's
true.
all in the kind of energy you radiate. And that's why it's the single most important skill we can start cultivating is to be aware of and in control of our inner energy.
So
And that
getting
includes
back,
emotions. Emotions
Right.
are a form of energy too. You were saying?
I was saying, getting back to the whole, real life Jedi, so on and so forth, and we were talking about George Lucas before. Do you think that George Lucas knows that he's a recipient for all of this information, or do you think he just figures it's his creativity in entertaining people?
I can't speak for him. Only George Lucas can speak for George Lucas, of course. But I can tell you, when asked about it, he says it's a work of fiction designed to entertain people. He, at the time at least, didn't claim to know anything about the Egyptian connection. He says his inspiration was the drama of Wagner and other operas, and he wanted to set it in space, and that he draws some inspiration from like the samurai and shogun legends of Japan. That's what he's admitted publicly. Only George knows what is in George's head. But I think whether he was consciously aware of it or not, he was definitely tapped into and channeling something, because it's not just the couple quotes from Yoda. There's so many metaphors throughout the movie. Like you mentioned, the lightsabers, could be literally a direct metaphor for our spine lighting up with Kundalini energy. The fact that in the original trilogy, before Luke can become a Jedi, he has to face what? His father and his past. There's so many wisdoms. I just have to assume he was tapped into something, whether he was aware of it or not. Now, there's this whole theory on the internet that he's really some Masonic Grand Master or something, and he just doesn't want to tell anyone.
Right? I know.
I can't confirm or deny that, certainly not in my lodge.
Hopefully he's not a member of Scientology. No, I don't think he is.
Hopefully not.
I don't think he is. I think he seems like a really grounded individual and very happy in his own skin, and he's made a lot of money off of this, but it's amazing how it has changed so many different people's lives.
He was brilliant. Back in the day, keep in mind, studios weren't making movies like this. An opera set in space? What? What have you been smoking? They didn't want to take a chance on him. They turned him down. The way he got Star Wars made is he said, okay, go ahead and make the movie. You don't have to pay me at all. As a writer, as a director, anything, I'll give it to you. Just make it. I just want the merchandising rights.
Oh, man. And there's so much.
And that was the most brilliant decision ever made, right? Because think of how many mugs, T-shirts, action figures. The merchandising rights are where the money is. He's like, if the movie flops, you don't lose anything, But yeah, if it gained, now of course he doesn't own a lot of it anymore himself. I'm sure he kept a chunk for himself, but it's Disney now.
Right. I know they totally took it over and have their own little thing going on there on Disney, where you can actually watch Star Wars in cartoon form, or animatronic, or CG, computer generated stuff. We actually took the kids to Disneyland finally. We've been promising my oldest daughter, she's 20 now, we've been promising her since she was 2 years old, and we just took her this last summer.
Did you see the Star Wars stuff?
Oh, it was so awesome. And we actually went on one of the days where you can get in early and get in line because the lines for the Star Wars section were insane. You'd have to be there for days to get through something.
Oh, I
So we got
bet.
there early in the morning and got in line and got to go on one of the Star Cruisers or whatnot. And, you know, the littles are the gunners, and then our two daughters are the pilots, and then we were in the back taking care of all the repairs to the ship. But it was...
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was very spectacular and everything. It did feel like you were there kind of on scene for Star Wars.
I have to make that Mecca, Tessa. I haven't done it yet, I have to tell you, but we got to do that.
Put it on your bucket list.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was awesome. So, Oksana, talking about chakras, so on and so forth, how often should a person cleanse their chakras in order to keep the energy flowing and be able to encompass that light and energy within?
I believe it should be done every day, just the way you take showers, just the way you eat food every day, 3 times a day. You should be cleansing your aura and your chakras. And for some people, it seems very overwhelming because they feel like there is not enough time. But what I notice is when I don't do those rituals, and it doesn't have to be necessarily particularly chakra cleansing, you can just do spiritual work. When you do spiritual work, you naturally cleanse your chakras because you become stronger as a spiritual being. So you should create some kind of daily rituals. And for example, one day you work on your abundance mentality. So seems like you're not doing anything with your chakra, but you're actually strengthening your root chakra. The next day you do self-love exercises and you strengthen your heart chakra. And then you practice sacred sexuality and you strengthen your sacral chakra. You practice intuition, you strengthen your third eye chakra. So it's not actually like laying down and cleansing your chakras, but doing that kind of work towards each area of your life, and all your chakras will be balanced. And the best way to actually cleanse your chakras is bathing. You know, I love bathing more than anything in the world. I think I take minimum seven, maybe 6 baths a week, salt bath. Because salt literally cleanses your aura. And I naturally just love bathing so much, and I can feel that. That's why I have so much energy. Like, a lot of people tell me I am highly energetic because it's just like, for the work that I do, they say, wow, how can you do that? You know, like you work non-stop. It's because I have so much energy. Like if I don't work that much, I cannot actually fall asleep, you know?
Right. So when you do bathe in a salt bath, do you use Epsom salt or do you use other salts?
Actually,
what do you
no,
recommend?
I use sea salt or Himalayan pink salt.
Yes, Himalayan salt is amazing.
And also one advice for those who would like to save on it, it's not coming from a lack mentality, but from an abundance. In Russia, when I lived in Russia, salt baths, it was like so easy and acceptable everywhere. I mean, it like cost like $1 sea salt for the bath. Here in America, for some reason, they charge $20 for one sea salt because I use it for one time. So if I use it every day, there was no point for me. So I actually found that buying sea salt for cooking, it's the same. It's actually even better because it's like pure sea salt, nothing is added. And it's so salty, and it's so how to say it, like so much flavor in it.
So you're saying get it from the grocery store instead of from the pharmacy?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Ah.
It's the same with Himalayan pink salt. There are shops, like recently I was in one shop and I purchased 20 or 10 of those. It was Himalayan pink salt, also like $3 or $2, because truly salt cannot cost $20. That's what my opinion.
Right.
Because I live in Russia, I cannot be tricked into this. If I didn't live in Russia, I may be tricked. But in Russia, it's like so available because Russian people love bathing.
Well, salt is this thing that runs into our rivers and streams and lakes from the mountains every time it rains. In some areas, it's actually a problem that there's too much salt and minerals running into the lakes and it's over-salinating them.
That's when you get alkaline and such, right?
Uh-huh. There's a few lakes and natural environments that are being destroyed because they're being over-salinated, and they're trying to figure out how to desalinate them. And here again, it's like it's become an industry because a few people are in control of the resources, and they're not dividing them evenly, and charging others. So it creates this divide between rich and poor. Whereas if we put systems into place, like Tesla had the idea with free energy. Desalination, same thing. There's places where too much salt is a problem. If we had a system in place for collecting resources where there's too much of them and distributing them in places where people need more of them, we'd all be happier. I believe we could have wealth and build a great society through cooperation as well. It doesn't have to be competition.
It was amazing outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, driving, and I can't remember what town we were going to.
Right.
We were going to rescue a guy whose vehicle had broke down, but for miles and miles and miles, it's just salt. And you could even pull over on the side of the road and pick up a chunk of it if you wanted to. And then you see this Morton salt plant with piles and piles of salt next to it that is just collecting from this dry
Morton
seabed.
isn't even salt. Have you looked at it with a magnifying glass?
No.
It's like miniature toothpaste. It's not salt, is crystals, right?
Right.
Not Morton's. Morton is like these little cylinders. It looks like it was extruded out of a tube.
So weird.
Look at it with a magnifying glass sometime.
It's like, why
I'm
do
not
they
sure
do that?
that's
And it's
salt.
probably to spread it out more, kind of like drug dealers do. They'll put stuff in it to spread it out more, make more money. But yeah, all you got to do is pick it up off the side of the road and grind it, and you got your salt right there. There's no
There
reason
you go.
you should have to reformulate the whole thing. It's ridiculous, and it's so readily available there. Why even do that? But, the almighty dollar, evil in its
That's
truest
kind
form.
of what it is. And why do we chase the dollar? It's that fear mentality, that lack mentality. The rich people that put these systems of control into place, I feel sorry for them because they're not rich at all. They're operating from a fear of lack and scarcity and fear, and that fear and scarcity is not going to go away no matter how much money they fill their bank accounts with. They need a healing of the soul is what they need.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and there's so many people trying to keep us down. I mean, I think this country was founded on fear and control, because, the church making different rules, and suicide is a sin, when in fact it's said that there is a place in heaven for tormented souls. But they, they come over and they're having such a difficult time. All they want to do is end it, so they kill themselves. So they put it into the church that this is a sin. And I'm not telling anybody to kill yourself, because I do believe that life is a gift, and not everybody gets the gift of life. Not everybody gets a long life. A lot of people are taken early. But it's a thing of control and not wanting to lose people, and feeding off those people, whether it be monetary or service, so on and so forth. And
But
the Bible,
it's become
even,
predatory. Our economics has become predatory in many ways.
and even our churches, even the Bible, things have been omitted and added for the control of man. And I'm not Catholic, but I do believe in St. Michael and so many different things that they have. And I love this new Pope. He's my favorite. There's so many things he's done that I really appreciate. One of the things coming up is translating the Bible again in its truest form, and I cannot wait to read it, because I know from my gut instinct and things within me, reading these different scripts, ancient scripts, that some things in there are true and some things aren't. And
the Bible as we know it today, sorry to say, it's not the Word of God, it's the Word of men. It's historically documented. The present version of the Bible was written by Emperor Constantine and the bishops that he assembled at the time at the Council of Nicaea at 328 AD. It's documented. We know exactly where it happened and when it happened. They got together and wrote what is today the present version. It would be much more interesting to get the original Aramaic translations of documents like the Dead Sea Scrolls that were written by the Essenes and the Gnostics at the time, which would have been the people Jesus Christ himself would have been studying with at the time.
Yeah,
I'd love to see demonstration or translations of some of their documents. as opposed to what we know a bunch of Romans got together and wrote at 328 AD. Because who is it that we say nailed Jesus to the cross in the first place? It was the Romans. So the present day Bible, you have to realize, is their version of events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The ones who murdered him. It's their take on it. It's what they felt was safe consumption for the masses.
Yeah, you just got to ask for that gift of discernment to know what is true and what is not. And it's even in our education system. Things are written for the winner or whatever. Things that they want you to believe that a lot of times you look at as an adult and you know that it was totally wrong, like what they taught you. Why do they even do that? Is to control you and control your mind. Same reason they aren't disclosing UFOs and aliens to us. They don't want us to know.
To breed good little consumers.
Yep. So what else should our listeners know about using the Force and how to attain it and how to become a true Jedi?
Well, first and foremost, like we've been saying, look within. The way you discern, the way you know the difference between truth and BS is look within. Everything that anybody presents to you, spend some time meditating on it. See how it feels. You'll find that there's two distinct flavors of energy. There's more than that, but certainly two that everybody can discern between. One kind of feels quicker and makes you feel lighter and more filled with light, and one feels denser and heavier and darker. So with anything you're exposed to, pay attention to what you're feeling in the heart. Does it lift you up or does it drag you down? Does it quicken your energy or does it slow it down? Always use kind of your own internal compass to be your discernment. But to answer your question, how to be a Jedi, that's part of the problem. I mean, it took me probably 20 years of searching, and I'm still searching, mind you. I don't think I've arrived anywhere. I'm still on a quest. I'm still very much searching. But it took me 20 years of research before I even felt comfortable talking about this stuff. Because there is no one guidebook, there's no one manual, there's no one tradition. Everybody has a piece of the puzzle. I found a piece of it in Japan, studying with the martial artists. I found a piece of it studying with the Buddhist monks. I found a piece of it researching Egyptian history, as you did, Oksana. You found a lot of it in your Russian traditions, right? We didn't even talk about that yet. Your Russian heritage. Maybe you want to say a word or two about that?
I'd love to hear it.
About Jedi in Russia?
About your particular heritage from Russia. You come from a very special region.
Oh, yes. So as Andrei said to me about that you love your program are very paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually grew up in a very mystical place of Russia. I would say one of the most mystical places. It's called Udmurtia. That's actually the vortex, a very mystical vortex where I would say like half of people, at least half of the population of people, are witches and warlocks.
A lot of people don't realize the word shaman is not South American in origin. Yeah. It's actually a Russian word.
Yeah. And so we're so connected to the parallel world that it's normal for us. Like, for example, when I came to America and I talked to even Andrei about mystical people in Russia and how openly they tell what they can do. He's like, they do it openly like this? I said, yes. It's like on every corner they do it in the place where I was born this. And we are very close. Like for me, when my grandmother passed away, we closed all the mirrors at home because we knew we could see spirits. So it was absolutely normal to us when the door was opening up. It was normal to us. Like we weren't afraid because we naturally believe in ghosts, and we believe that like when a person is dying, 40 days afterwards the soul lives with us. So in other words, where I was born, we are the kind of people that can actually hear the other world, because the other world exists for everyone, but not everybody is able to see and hear it. And we're very sensitive to that.
But to answer your question, that's just it. That's why the quest took me so far, over 20 years and counting, Tessa, is that there is no one manual. Every tradition has a piece of the puzzle. That was a big inspiration in why Oksana and I came together to form our company, Apex Life Mastery, is because we want to create the sort of manuals and training courses that we wish we had when we were learning this stuff. Imagine what kind of world we lived in if we started developing kids in elementary school, developing their awareness of energy, their telepathic abilities, things like that. And that's what we're working on creating, actually, is a book, is a course, step by step. Day 1, lesson 1, do this. Day 2, lesson 2, do this. This is how you develop your awareness of energy. This is how you get in touch with your magical abilities. We're kind of trying to do what we wish we had when we were learning this stuff. Because it's not out there, and it should be.
Yes, and I believe truly that each one can be a Jedi, each one can be anything he, she wants. However, not everybody has this desire, right? So if you have this desire, please never ever suppress yourself. Never think that I cannot do this because my goal sounds too big and so large. Truly, when I was a little girl, I told all my family that I would go to America. Nobody believed me because they thought my dreams are too big. I mean, 16 years old girl, she wants to go to America. It's
16-year-old orphan.
Yes, it sounds too intense for some people, but I didn't allow other people to tell me what to do and limit my dreams. People also discouraged me about other things. They say you would definitely come back, but guess what? I didn't allow anybody to suppress my goals, and I'm here in America exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I want to do. So I believe there is no limit what you can create, and your dreams shouldn't be limited because you feel that you're small. When the first plane was created, actually bicycle, when those two people had this idea about the bicycle, right?
The Wright brothers.
The Wright brothers, yes, sorry, I forgot not forgot, but I was remembering at this moment. Yes, the whole world was against it. Not against it, they were rejecting this. They're like, oh no, this cannot possibly happen, but they believed in it. And they
Did you know the light bulb when it first came out was called The Work of the Devil?
That's what I mean. So don't listen to others, because if people have limitations in their own mind, if they laugh at you, if you call yourself Jedi, it's their limitation, not yours. Because the more you believe who you are, the more the doors will open up for you. The more knowledge you will have available for you to become a real life Jedi, just like Andrei Knight.
I'm a Templar Knight. I don't claim to be a Jedi, but intuitively,
you are Jedi.
I feel that that's the path since I was that boy that saw Star Wars and thought there was more to it than just a good story. I kind of feel that's the quest I've been walking.
Yeah, I believe not only the energy within us, but the mind is a powerful thing, and to control your thoughts. But I often say
the mind is everything, Tessa.
Yeah, it's a powerful
is the key
thing.
To the whole thing.
Indeed.
Actually, no mind.
No mind.
No
yes.
mind. Okay, so the mind is very powerful, but it can also make you crazy. So it's a combination of using your mind for powerful purposes, and then being able not to think and disconnect it. So you live fully present, but when you need to create your goals and desires and manifest something, you use your mind. It's a combination.
You don't let it control you. Albert Einstein said something like, the mind is the servant, the imagination is the master, and the problem with our society, he said this almost 100 years ago, is that we have allowed the servant to become the master.
Right. But I often say anything is possible because I do believe that, and facts are indeed stranger than fiction. But if you believe it, you can achieve it. And if you can dream it, you can be it, There's so many things out there. You just got to put that belief and that faith in it, and you can do it.
You literally can, Tessa. Whether it's opening yourself up more to talk to spirits, to receive messages from the beyond. Only about half of what I know about ancient history I learned through my connections to the Templar Order and their teachings and archives. The other half, I've just gone back, time traveled, and experienced directly. Like I said, your past lives aren't over. They're available to you. We've taught ourselves by habit, by default, by lack of trying, to live this very limited experience of being in one point in space-time at a time, localized to one lump of flesh that we call a body. But that's all self-imposed limitations. That's not the way the world actually is or works.
Right.
And it's just making that choice, really, to look beyond and to experience more. We live in a free will universe. People are like, well, that all sounds great and romantic and wonderful, but like, why hasn't it happened to me? Well, have you asked? We do live in a free will universe. None of this opens up to you if you don't proactively take the steps to connect with it and discover it. It's a free will universe. It will never come to you. You have to ask, you have to look, you have to set out on your quest and take that first step yourself. But then once you do, the entire world, the entire universe opens up to you. I've time traveled, I've traveled off-world, all of this is possible. Anybody that says meditation is for relaxation and stress reduction hasn't graduated from kindergarten yet.
Right? To me, it's stressful sometimes, trying to attain that stillness.
But there's tools, there's techniques. That's the thing. Nobody's ever shown you how. If we sat down, probably in 5 to 10 minutes, I could get you meditating at the level of a Zen monk. It's just that nobody's shown you. But then once you go past that stage, like I would say deeper levels of meditation are much more akin to intergalactic, interdimensional travel.
Yeah, I've just recently discovered binaural beats and have used it to help me sleep, and it's amazing the effects that it has, just the different things in our world that we can use.
Well, there you go. And it's not mysticism, it's science. There's just a lot of these ancient sciences were so advanced, our modern science hasn't caught up and understood yet. We haven't developed the instruments yet to measure the sorts of phenomenon that were commonplace to these people. And that's why we call it supernatural. But yeah, binaural beats, it's easily explainable with science, but it's an ancient thing. Ancient shaman and mystics, the reason they danced and sang was the very same thing. It's to change your brainwave states. When you change your state from beta into alpha or into theta or to delta, you're literally changing your experience of reality. You're going off into a trance state, not unlike what some drugs can induce. You're literally changing your reality when you change your brainwave. Binaural beats tune your brain to a different frequency, and therefore you experience a different state. A lot of what we call mysticism is really science. It's just, it wasn't mysticism to the mystics back then.
Right.
It was their science, but a lot of it is that simple. You expose your brain to a different frequency, its own brain state frequency changes, and now you experience a different reality. Just like a radio, right? You turn the dial, you hear a different song. Your whole experience in the room becomes different, the mood, the emotion. You haven't switched radios. You've just turned the dial and turned the frequency that it's turned to. Brainwave states work the same way. Meditation is no different than binaural beats, is no different than chanting mantras, is no different than when the Native Americans do their sacred dances. It's designed to induce a trance state. In other words, a different frequency.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm thinking about, the force and the energy within us. And it takes me back to a time when someone showed me how to... Well, I felt his energy, like he's holding his hand above my body a few inches or whatever, but you could feel the energy coming off of him. Using the force, is that taking the energy that we have, that field around us, and focusing it?
That field is always there. You see, energy works whether you believe in it or not. That field is always around us. It's always being influenced by us, and it's influencing us. What needs to change is your awareness of it. So you become more consciously aware of it, and you work with it consciously instead of it always moving you. It's sort of like learning to swim when you're first thrown into a swimming pool. You can splash about and panic, but you won't get very far. But if you just relax, you can float without doing anything, without exerting any energy. You can just float. But now if you focus your energy and move your limbs in tandem, now you can actually move around in this new fluid space.
Right.
Energy is no different. It's always there. It's always available to us. It's just opening our awareness to the point that we can work with it. And healing, directing it, absolutely. I learned energy work actually when my cat was dying from kidney failure. If you remember 10 years ago, there was the whole IAMS science diet thing where they were using the cheap gluten from China and it was poisoning some cats. My cat was one of those victims. Went from totally healthy to 10% function left in one kidney, should be dead within 2 to 3 weeks overnight.
I'm sorry.
Literally overnight. Oh, it's okay. Everything happens for a reason. You can't do dialysis on a cat. The vet gave us these big syringes, taught me how to do like subdermal saline solution injections. You basically flush the cat out, because you can't do dialysis and their kidneys aren't working. Well, my cat didn't like getting injections 3 times a day, as you imagine. He used to hiss and hide under the bed when I'd walk into the room.
Right.
So we stopped all of his medications. We stopped his injections. He lived another 2.5 years, not 2 to 3 weeks. And all I did for him was energy. And I didn't even know energy. I didn't have anybody show me how. I just started doing it. I wanted more than anything for him to feel better. I saw when he was toxified. He looked like he was sleepy. His eyes would roll into the bed. I could see him being poisoned by his own toxins. And I wanted to help him detox. And I just started intuitively moving my hands over his body. A lot of times when he was sleeping. And he has no way of knowing what I'm doing. He would start purring in his sleep. And I could see the hairs moving on his skin right under where my hands were. That's what sold me. I'm like, okay, this stuff is not just my imagination. I'm literally watching hairs move. This is not my imagination. And the moment I started believing in it, and I'm not even going to use the word belief, knowing. You asked me in the beginning of the show what I believe. It's not a matter of belief. It's once that belief turns into knowing, you get 100 times more powerful. Because before that, it's like, is it working? Is it not working? Am I feeling something? Am I not feeling? That's the mind debating with itself again. Right. That's exactly what stands in the way. When you can get past the mind and get into pure feeling, pure knowing, you become unstoppable. It's like Luke. Remember Luke in the very first Star Wars? He's got to sink that torpedo down that little hole. He's flying 1,000 miles a second, right? In a spaceship, not an airplane, a spaceship. And he's got to sink that little torpedo into that little hole. And 3 men fail before him. And what does he do? He turns his targeting computer off. And he just does it by feel. And he lands that missile where it's supposed to go when everybody failed before him. Because he puts the computer away and he just goes on pure feeling. When you reach that level, you're unstoppable. Whatever abilities you may have now, once it becomes a knowing, they amplify 1,000-fold. It sounds corny, but it's literally like the movies say. Trust the force, and then it's going to start working for you. If it's not, then there's still some doubts hanging around.
Right. Self-doubt is such a big plague, and
it's the big killer. Look at Dune, a totally unrelated fictional canon. Look at the Dune. I'm so interested to see what they do with that remake. But what does Paul Atreides say in there? I feel the fear and I let it pass through me. Right? I do not doubt, for that is the mind killer. Remember the little poem he's always reciting to himself when he's scared or when he's going into battle?
Right.
Same stuff. It's the same stuff. It's really the doubt that stands in our way.
Yeah, it's amazing. Everything that is out there that is abundant and there for our use and will, so on and so forth. If we could just harness it, just imagine where we could be today.
Absolutely, and if more people awaken to this knowledge, it's gonna be like epidemia. It's not a good word, epidemia, but like it will be so contagious because, again, if you heard the experiment.
Oh no, you guys just cut out. I can't hear you. Oh, reconnecting. What the heck is going on? Oh, wow. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I lost them. It says reconnecting. Hold on. Holy shnikes. And it's always when there's a good message happening. Something's got to come in and cut it off. I'm going to end that call, and then I'm going to call them right back. I don't know what happened. Okay, I'm calling them back right now. I'm so sorry, you guys. It's insanity. Holy shnikes, where are you? Wow. Not getting an answer. This is terrible. Unavailable. Weird. Trying again. Gotta adapt and overcome over this. Wow.
Hi, Tessa. It seems we lost you there.
Yeah, that was so crazy. She was talking about, the epidemic or whatever, and she started to go into that, and I'm like, man, as soon as we
Internet gremlins, right? It's almost like the
Right.
message doesn't want to be out there. But
Doesn't
the
want you
same
to
thing
share
will
it.
happen in reverse. The Heart Math Institute talks a lot about not only heart-brain coherence, but heart-to-heart coherence from person to person. So as you're awakening, you're also helping those around you become awakened as well. You're going to radiate that energy.
Yeah, it's it's amazing how different energies can feed off of each other or deplete a person. You talk about vampires. I believe that there's energy vampires, people that can just suck the life or energy out of you.
Yes, there are those, but only if you allow them, because the stronger you become, the less you can be affected. I've had one of the most incredible conversation with one of my friend, and once I told him, and he's very successful, he's multi-millionaire, and I once asked him about whether he believes in any dark evil or black eye, and he said, I do believe in it, but I also believe it nobody can affect me. So it's also your own belief and your own strength that can literally deflect anything that doesn't serve you from you. So it's again in your choice, and you become strong as you believe you are. Because I worked with one of the best teachers, and when I came to her the first time, I felt so weak. I don't know, I didn't feel that powerful. And in few classes, she just helped me to realize that it's not how you feel, it's how you decide, like who you want to be. You can trick that feeling. You can shift the feeling. You are not a victim of your feeling. You are not a victim of your circumstance. You are in complete control of your destiny, and you can become strong, and you can deflect all that doesn't serve you. And you can, if you attract those people who tend to suck your energy, it's because you also have a particular pattern in you that need it. And as soon as you learn that lesson, as soon as you become strong, those people automatically disappear from you.
Yeah, it's amazing. When I was younger, I felt like I had this psycho magnet, in me, and all these crazy negative people were drawn to me. And I slowly learned how to pick up on those energies instead of being a person that gives someone 3 chances or whatever. I could walk into a room now and not even talk to somebody and know whether or not I want to talk to them due to the energy that they're putting off. You know, I don't even have to hear one word they say before I know I don't want to be anywhere near that person. And so luckily I always say I got that psycho magnet removed, or the crazy magnet.
That's very good.
Uh-huh. And that's the thing. You need to pay attention to those sorts of things. When you get a good vibe or a bad vibe about a person or a place, you gotta listen to it.
Mm-hmm. And I tell people that often, listen to your gut. Like for me, my brain, you know, overthinking things, my heart, other aspects of myself have led me astray, but listening to that gut instinct has never been wrong, you know. There's a reason that it's there, that it's triggered, and it's trying to tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And that's how you make your intuition stronger, is simply by listening to it more. A lot of people think they're following their intuition, but what they're following is the 10 thoughts they have after trying to logic it to death. It's that first hunch. That's what you really want to zero in on, and it's going to get stronger. It's going to talk to you more if it feels listened to.
So you guys have a book, right, for a step-by-step energy mastery, literally starting with day 1, lesson 1. Is there a special offer for our listeners tonight?
We're still working on it, both a book and a corresponding online course. We're doing both because people like to learn different ways, video, audio, book format. We're doing both. We created a landing page just for you and your listeners because we also want this information going to the sorts of people that can put it to good use. So for you guys, we made a landing page. Go to our website, apexlifemastery.com, and then put /paradox after it. And right away, we'll send you a video lesson to start for free. So you can experiment with energy and feel it and start getting used to just feeling it and moving around your body. When the book is ready, we're going to send your listeners an offer where they can get it for just 99 cents. And then when the course goes online, we'll give you guys the chance to buy it for half off. And anything we put out in the future, you know, like I said, the people that can really put it to the most use, that are open to this stuff, that kind of intuitively have known this stuff is real and they want to play with it, that's the hands we want to put it into first. So once you go to that link, it'll tag you, and future visits to the website, future products, you guys will always know about it first, and we'll always get the best pricing. But yeah, we're going to start with the book. When that does come out, we're looking at probably end of February, beginning of March is when we're thinking. But when it comes out, you'll get an email, you'll get an offer to get it for just 99 cents. And in the meantime, we'll send you free video lessons to get you started.
That is awesome. Sandra Heath agrees. She said, awesome, in the chat room. She's been loving the whole conversation tonight. And generally our chat room is awesome. Just off the wire, but everybody's been so quiet and just listening and piping up here and there. But I'm so grateful that you did contact me, Andrei, and that we were able to do this show. And I'm so excited to do another show with you guys this coming month and learning more from you guys, and our listeners are really ecstatic about that as well. They've really loved your guys' company and your information, and that the knowledge you guys have been sharing.
Love you guys. We'd love to be back.
We love you so much. We can wait to see you soon.
Awesome.
Talk to you soon.
No worries. Thank you guys so much again for being my guests tonight, Andrei and Oksana, and joining us on Late Night in the Rockies on We Are Paradox Media. It was a pleasure having you guys, and like I said, I can't wait to do it again and have you guys back. I'm so stoked.
It's an honor. We look forward to it.
We look forward to it.
And thank you to all of our friends on We Are Paradox Media's Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Periscope, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and I can't wait to do it again next weekend. On Saturday night, we have the Paradox Paranormal Forum, and then on Sunday night, we have Jay and Marie Yates. They've been on so many different paranormal shows, and I can't wait to pick their brains and hear their stories of the paranormal and how they got into it in the first place. I know both of them have had very hairy experiences throughout their life. But you guys, don't forget, we are all in this together. Together we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. And if you would like to join us on the Skype after party, look me up and send me a contact request at live TessaTNT Thomas30, or give us a jingle at 1-970-335-9596. I may not be able to get you in immediately, but I will call you back into the show. Until next time, nighty night, love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, Sunday, or a wonderful rest of your Monday if you are there across the pond. I will see you back here, same time, same place next week. You guys take care of yourselves, and don't let the holiday craziness get you down.